You don't exist. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who take on my hate. Look me better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheap again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 6th part of What If Deku Meets My Little Pony? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Demon Heart 12 on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. In Class 1B meanwhile, Vlad King looked at Ibra who seemed to be busy at the moment. Shiozaki, I can't express how proud I am of you for making it into the semifinals. You made. He then noticed the girl writing something in her notebook. He walked up to her, stood in front of her desk, and asked, Hey, Shiozaki, I'm going to marry your sister. What do you think about that? The girl replied, Sure thing, Vlad-sensei. Save for the fact that I don't have a sister, and what you said is sinful. She closed her notebook. I was just putting my last touches on my cull. I mean Midoriya's fan club. Yeah, his fan club. Nothing happening there. Itsuka knocked her out, no cults are going to happen around while I'm breathing. The girl cursed Izuku, DMNU, Midoriya. You turned our cinnamon roll into a creepy worshipper. Pony only sighed, I'll tell him to play with her mind a little to remove the whole thinking that he's a god thing. Itsuka frowned but nodded with a dejected expression. Vlad then said, Anyways, good work everyone. Now, you all have the weekend to do whatever you want. Next week, you'll have your internship results. He looked at Ibra, take her to Midoriya to wipe her mind clean or mess with it till she stops her plans of making a cult based around him. He then popped a bunch of pills, I'm not paid enough for this SHT. Pony rubbed her forehead, but suddenly a poof happened in front of her. When the smoke cleared, she saw 2 gifts on her desk with a note that said, To my lovely girlfriend, happy birthday. The girls cooed at the gesture, but Itsuka was a little bit suspicious about this. Pony happily opened the first gift only for it to explode in her face. When the smoke cleared, the horse girl's face was entirely black. Some of the boys were cackling in laughter till the girl glared in their general direction making them wilt. Pony's eyebrows began to twitch, I'm going to kill that little. Pony let out a series of curses in English that only Setsuna and Juzo understood. She then eyed the second gift cautiously. She began to poke it from its sides. The girl carefully removed the ribbon from the top and looked at its contents. The only thing inside the box was an egg, making Kendo rub her head in confusion. Seriously, he gave you an egg on your birthday? She looked at Pony who was beaming with happiness, and why are you so happy? Pony exclaimed, This isn't just any egg. This is. Yui carried on with sudden excitement and happiness, a Pokemon egg. Pony began to jump and down like an excited toddler with Yui joining her in excitement. She took out the egg and examined it further. The egg was brown with a zigzag pattern. The egg began to shake and rattle. The egg finally cracked a little. The cracks began to grow larger and larger till the egg shattered completely and revealed a small dog-like creature with a furry coat. Pony and Yui exclaimed excitedly, It's an EV. It's so cute. The girls had other reactions. Kinoko smiled at the cute creature. Setsuna smirked since she still had the stronger creature. Ibra looked at the creature with evident shock. Itsuka sighed as she felt that her life would be 10 times more complicated from this moment going forward. Yui looked at Ibra, Hey, Ibra. The religious girl looked at her, Do you think I can join your fan club? The vine-haired girl nodded making Yui smile. Kendo then smacked them both, No making creepy cults under my supervision, got it? Izuku then appeared from nowhere. He looked at Pony and asked her, So? He managed to grab his girlfriend's attention. Did you like my gifts to you? I put special thought into both of them. The girl walked to him as she rubbed Evie's hair. Pony looked Izuku in the eyes as she delivered the mother of all kicks to his groin, making the boy let out an inhuman screech of absolute pain. The girl said, "This is for the first gift." She then pecked him on the head, "This is for the second one." The boy didn't even reply because his soul left his body from the pain. The boys rushed to his aid, making the girls roll their eyes. Itsuka then grabbed him by the neck, "Fix Ibra up." She then put him in front of the girl. Izuku rubbed the back of his head. "I don't see anything wrong with her. She seems fine to me." Itsuka replied, "She's planning to make a cult in your honor named the Brides of Izuku or something like that." She then enlarged her fist, "So do something." Izuku looked at Ibra. "Shiozaki, you need to stop this. I'm no god." He then opened a portal and brought out a stick from it. "Now, I want you to look in the stick so I can erase any thought you have about me being a god, okay?" Ibra shook her head. "No, I refuse. I have the right as a free person to believe what I want." Izuku rubbed the back of his head in confusion, thinking about a way to make the girl comply. Discord then appeared on his shoulder and gave him some advice. "Look, here's the game plan." Izuku listened carefully to his mentor. "Now go do it." Izuku then asked her, "Do you think this is what Jesus wants you to do?" The girl stiffened as she shriveled up on herself. She looked away and said meekly, "No, but..." Izuku carried on, "You don't want to be considered blasphemous, do you?" "No, but..." Ibra started before exclaiming, "There are already 10 different churches that revolve around you, and that is now. And they are still going up as we speak. Why can't I have one?" Izuku and Discord looked at each other, deciding to save this information for later on. This information managed to send chills down both their spines. Izuku said, "But that doesn't make it right now, does it?" The girl looked away for a bit before nodding her head. She looked at the device as Izuku said, "Cheese." There was a bright flash of light. After the flash of light disappeared, Izuku looked at Ibra. "Shiozaki, what do you think about cults that worship people who aren't God?" The girl blinked a little before blinking a little, registering the question. "Hello, Earth," to Shiozaki. "Are you still with us?" The girl shook her head. "Yes, I am a little bit dizzy, but to answer your question." The girl gained a slight edge in her voice. "I see them as despicable people who strayed away from God's will." Izuku nodded. "Okay, that's cool." He patted her head. "Thank you for your input, Shiozaki." Ibra's interest was quipped by the sudden question, so she inquired, "Why did you ask me that, by the way?" She then saw sweat pouring down his face and Itsuka's face. Izuku coughed. "Well, you see, there have been some people who made churches revolving around me, so I need help in." A finger was put on his mouth. Ibra hushed him. "Worry not, Midoriya." She stood up and walked away. "I'll bring my crusading equipment." She reached the door. "I'll see you in front of the school in half an hour." Izuku scratched his head. "Okay, that just happened." He looked at Kendo. "I just hope I didn't send her to start a sudden crusade." Itsuka sighed. "Just in case, Kamakiri, front and center." The boy marched and saluted Kendo. "Hide your sword collection away, because I'm sure I saw a bored sword there." Kamakiri nodded his head and ran away. Pony then poked Izuku on his shoulder and asked him, "Does it evolve? Where can I find a rune to make it evolve even further?" Izuku shook his head. "This one doesn't need a rune." He lifted his hand, putting out one finger. "It needs one thing and one thing only, constant training and love." Pony giggled. "Dummy, that's 2 things." Izuku frowned a little. "Does that make it a problem?" Pony kissed him on the lip and said, "No, not really." She turned to make away, but stopped to ask Izuku, "Oh, can you tell what does this EV evolve into?" Izuku hummed, "Well, since it is with you, it will most likely evolve into Falrian due to your fiery personality." Pony hummed a little and nodded her head. Yui poked Izuku in the shoulder. He looked at the girl who was sporting a small blush. Yui then asked, "Can you give me a Pokemon of my own?" Izuku nodded and snapped his fingers. A puff of smoke appeared in front of Yui, making the normally expressionless girl beaming with excitement. When the smoke cleared, a small dinosaur-like creature appeared. It was colored blue with a gem on its side. It had blue eyes. The girl hugged it and began to jump up and down. Yay, it's an Amora. Everyone in the class, especially Kendo, had a disturbed face since they never saw Yui this animated before. It felt wrong to them to say her this expressive. Kendo sighed and looked at Yui and Pony. Look girls, you can keep them, but remember one important detail. Both girls looked at her and concentrated. I'm not going to scoop their poop off like with Tokeichi's dinosaur. Got it? She messaged her forehead a little. One more unexpected chaotic event, and I'm going to have a breakdown. Tetsu poked her shoulder. Big sis, the girl glared at him. We might have a problem. Itsuka looked at the door and was stunned. In front of the door was Ibra. The religious girl was decked in medieval armor with a sword attached to her side. The girl said, "All right, Midoriya, let's go hunt down some sinners and let the word of God shine upon them." Itsuka could only look in shock and disbelief at what happened. She didn't even say a word. She simply just looked and looked, not reacting to anything. Inside Itsuka's mind, a mouse on a small wheel was running as fast as it could. The mouse suddenly stopped and fell down in exhaustion as it rotated with the wheel till it finally stopped. Izuku stood in front of Itsuka as Ibra approached her and looked at the boy. Did we overdo it? Everyone looked at them as Reiko said, I know that I will regret this, but what are you talking about? Ibra suddenly blushed and looked away. Ibra then said, well, I really liked my angel wings, and I wanted them to be permanent, so I asked Midoriya if he could make that happen. He accepted, but asked for something in return. The girl began to drag her foot across the ground. He asked me to help him prank Kendo, making her believe that I think that he's God or something. Setsuna walked up to Ibra with disbelief all over her face. You, the holy maiden. She pointed at Ibra, sold Kendo's sanity for a pair of fluffy white wings. Ibra nodded her head, but Tokeichi hugged her and said, I'm so proud of you right now. The girl wiped a tear from her eye. They grow up so fast, but DMN. Setsuna looked at Izuku and Ibra. You got her good. I mean, you fried her brain. Izuku then stretched. Well, my job here is done. He looked at Pony. See for tomorrow's date. I'll pick you up from my mom's house. He then slapped Pony's butt before disappearing. He reappeared for a second and gave Ibra her new wings. He then disappeared for good this time. The horse girl's face was burning hot from this, so she ran outside the room at speeds that put Ida to shame. Everyone else shrugged as they left the room, while Tetsu hefted Kendo over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes to take her to her room. No one noticed Yui taking Ibra's cult notebook. The next day came, and Izuku was quite nervous, to say the least. He was being forced to go to the meeting of the gods that Discord told him about. Izuku looked at his mentor. Do I really have to go there? How about you go in my stead? Discord slapped him on the back of the head. Man up, you big baby. Do you want the other gods to think that you're a coward? Izuku shook his head. Good, then SCK it and go for it. Izuku sighed as Pony knocked on his dorm room. He opened it and the girl walked in. You know Kendo has put a red light on you and Ibra. She looked outside. In the morning, I saw Kendo plucking Ibra's feathers to make a pillow for herself as punishment for hurting you. I also saw a planning board for her revenge plan. Izuku shook her off. Please, as if Kendo can do actual harm on me. Pony sweat dropped when she saw her boyfriend decked in heavy-duty armor. Pony shook her head. So? She looked at the ground. Are you really going to meet other gods like Zeus and Jupiter? I think that's awesome, but why are you sweating bullets? Izuku was shaking. He looked at her and said, I'm worried, okay? I don't want to look like a complete idiot in front of actual gods. Do I look good? Is my clothing well enough? Pony slapped him on the back of the head. Clam down, you're going to down fine. She then added, Plus, those so-called deities aren't any better than you. Most of them spend their time making babies with human women or cursing people, like how Athena cursed poor Medusa to be a monster after Poseidon raped the girl. Izuku was dumbfounded. I have to admit that you have guts, Pony. He looked around. I mean, how you're willing to face the wrath of gods be placed upon you. The girl shrugged. I'm not afraid of some no-good-for-nothing old fossils. The boy sighed and exited the room. He had to make a trip to Greece because this was where the meeting was taking place. From what he heard, the meeting is happening inside the Pantheon. Pony asked him, "Are you really going to Greece?" The boy nodded. "Man, I'm so jealous of you. I really wanted to have a trip to other countries." The boy raised an eyebrow. "But you are here inside Japan. You are in another country." The girl shook her head. "I mean, I want to see places like China, Persia, England, Assyria." Izuku quirked his eyebrow. "Never took you for a history buff. I thought you were an anime otaku." Pony nodded. "I am, but I also like visiting places. So, how about for our anniversary next year, you take me to Rome so we can have fun there?" Izuku patted her head. "Okay, I'll think about that, but knowing you, you'll probably force me to do it anyway, so the answer is yes." Pony patted his head. "Good boy." The two continued to pat each other's heads for a while until someone stood behind them and coughed. Behind them was Momo, bringing a huge bowl of meat to her tigers. The girl said, "Although, I think that your relationship is really sweet. Please refrain from too much PDA." She finished with a blush. Izuku rubbed his chin. "You know, Momo, I'm going to Greece. What do you think about that?" Momo groaned. "Ugh, Greece is so overrated. My advice, go to Italy. Venice is such a nice place this time of the year. Greece is really a tourist trap." Izuku raised an eyebrow. "Wow, Momo. I didn't know that you didn't like Greece." He looked at her and rubbed his shoulder. "How come you don't like it?" Momo said, "Well, I'm not really into Greece. I like Roman much more. It's as simple as that." Izuku deadpanned at her. "You went there one time before UA, and you got scammed by someone, didn't you?" Momo blushed a little, making Izuku exclaim, "That totally happened, didn't it?" Momo's blush increased to astronomical levels. Momo defended herself. "That only happened when I was 10 years old." She stomped her feet on the ground and walked away to her room with a huge blush. Izuku laughed at her. "Man, getting a rise out of her is just as easy as kendo. Both are so prideful." Pony sighed. "You added her to your list of targets, didn't you?" Izuku nodded. "I'll begin torturing her when I return from the internships." He stopped registering what he just said out loud. "I mean annoying her, yeah, annoying her." Pony just shook her head and walked beside him. They bumped into Aizawa, who looked at Izuku and sighed. "What do you want this time, problem child?" He then saw Pony with him. "Please tell me that you don't have a rugrat coming any time soon. One of you is enough." Pony blushed and instinctively kicked the man in the groin, yelling, "Get your head out of the gutters." The man groaned in pain, having felt this pain once again after Jiro kicked him at the beginning of the year. Izuku looked at Pony and wondered, what the heck is it with girls and cheap shots? Izuku explained, "No, I'm actually going out with Pony. She wants to visit my mom." Aizawa nodded his head, "And I have the annual god meeting with other deities such as Zeus and Jupiter." Aizawa jumped straight on his feet. "You mean like the Greek and Roman gods of old times?" Izuku nodded his head as everyone then heard mad cackling coming from the speakers throughout the entire school, making many staff members go to the panic room. Aizawa sighed. "Fine, you can go, but don't bring any of them here." He looked outside. "Call me crazy, but I swear this morning I saw Shiozaki from class 1B flying with angel wings." He looked at his mug of coffee. "I think I need to let loose on the coffee. It's messing with my mind." The man walked away as Pony asked Izuku, "Should we tell him?" Izuku shook his head. "No, I want to see his reactions when he sees that what he saw was real." Pony shrugged and went to visit Izuku's mom as the boy himself opened a portal to Greece. Inside the teacher's staff room, Vlad was crying because he was now forced to adjust all training plans for Ibra because of her sudden manifestation of wings. When Pony arrived at the Midoriya household, the girl opened the door and walked, "Hi, Inko. It's nice to." Inko looked at Pony. "What's wrong, Pony? I know I have guests, but there's no need to be shy." The girl looked at the guest and gulped. Inside the living room was the president of the HSPC. Izuku gulped nervously. The boy was in Greece now and was heading toward the Parthenon in Athens. Today was his first annual meeting of the gods. He wondered how they even existed. He always thought they were just myths like Hercules and Medusa. Were they just some kind of pseudo-quirked humans? Or were they like Discord? Or the most interesting conclusion, were they aliens from outer space and people just started worshipping them? He looked at his mentor who was eating peanuts on his shoulder. "Hey Discord, what is the deal with those gods? I mean, how come they just disappeared one day?" Discord stroked his beard. "I generally have no idea, but the best explanation I have is that the emergence of monotheistic religions drove them into obscurity." He rubbed his right horn. "But what they are exactly? I'm not really sure. They're not like me. I'm a pure representation of chaos, but for example, Thor and Zeus aren't like me. They aren't pure representations of lighting." Izuku's sweat dropped. "So, your guess is as good as mine." He shook his head. "Well, that's kinda disappointing." He looked to the temple getting closer. "Are they as chill as you are?" Discord deadpanned. "I'm the god of chaos. I'm basically the other face of being chill." He put on sunglasses. "Didn't you see my past when we officially met for the first time?" Izuku glared. "I did, though I have to say that flying fish isn't something that I find funny." Discord gasped like a rejected schoolgirl. "How dare you? That's the greatest act of chaos ever." Izuku shook his head. "Anyway," he then returned to the issue at hand. "Can we please return to our original talk about how the gods are? Are they chill as you or are they like bakugou?" Discord shook his head. "I'm not sure. I guess they're just like humans. You'll have those who will welcome you with open arms. Others will avoid you since they don't much about you. Some will try to haze you since you're a newbie. Some won't blink since they don't care much. I guess you have to wait and see what happens." Izuku now stood in front of the Parthenon and said, "Well, here goes nothing." He looked around to make sure no one saw him. He took a step into the temple, but nothing happened. He looked at Discord. "What happened? Wasn't the meeting here? Did they change the location of the meeting?" He then jumped back and forth. "This is absolutely frustrating." Discord tilted his head. "Well, this is new." He grabbed his tail. "Perhaps, you should activate your dimensional vision. Maybe, there's some kind of doorway to the meeting of gods." Izuku looked at him. "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" Discord shrugged. "I thought you wanted to discover your powers on your own." Izuku's eyebrow twitched. "We'll talk about this later, but for now." Izuku activated his dimensional vision and saw an amorphous door that seemed to be vibrating at a certain frequency. The boy sighed. "Man, why does everything have to be so complicated?" Izuku began to vibrate his body to adjust it to the frequency so he could enter through the door. The boy walked through it only to be met by something he didn't expect. It was some sort of casino with drinks being disturbed around and meat on the grill. He expected something more epic. He thought that the meeting of gods would have thrones hanging in the middle of space. He imagined burning corridors mounted with the heads of each god's enemies. All in all, he just thought there would be something more intriguing. He walked around for a bit before he bumped into a very appealing lady. He wouldn't say it out loud, but Pony would look. He then remembered something that made him shiver. Pony grabbed him by the neck a night before he went to the meeting of the gods. "Listen here and listen well. If I feel for 1 second that you fooled around with one of the goddesses of love or FRTLTY. She grabbed him where it truly hurts, you won't be able to walk again, understood?" The boy shivered a little. Never once in his life has he felt such pure terror for his nether regions. He wondered how she could threaten him with such horrific physical harm. Izuku then heard the woman talking to him. "Greetings, I'm Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom and strategic war. And who you might be?" He noticed that her hand went to her sword. "You seem to be a bit lost." Izuku began to sweat. "I'm Izukumidoriya. I'm the god of chaos." Izuku looked away, even though I was kind of forced into it. Discord slapped the back of Izuku's head saying, "Don't chicken out now. We're in the middle of the meeting of the gods. Grow a spine." Athena gained a look of realization. "Oh, you're the newbie who caused a cosmic imbalance." She then looked at Discord, who chuckled. "Well, to be more accurate, your mentor caused a cosmic imbalance. This gave you a very bad name even among other gods of chaos, though Eris loved your fight against the blonde boy." Izuku's sweat dropped. "What about you? Do you hate me like the rest?" Athena patted his head. "Of course not, it's been boring around here lately. A new face would be appreciated." She then looked at her father, who was busy talking with Thor. "Though my dad doesn't want you to be here." She stopped for a bit, "And so do the Egyptian gods, Mayans, Norse, Incans, Roman, Phoenicians." Izuku stopped her. "How about you make it easier for me and tell me who wants me here?" Athena nodded. "Well, other than Japanese and Chinese deities, I think that only Ares and Loki want you here, since they find you amusing and want to teach you their ways of chaos." She looked around. "By the way, reject my brother's offer. His teachings will oppose your heroic attitude." Izuku nodded his head. "Well, I'll go to the Japanese side." Athena waved him goodbye. "Good luck, Izuku." She looked at Zeus. "You'll need it later." Izuku looked at Discord. "Well, this wasn't so bad." He wiped some sweat from his forehead. "I thought she would be more unwelcoming. Let's hope the Japanese are like her." He walked toward a woman who seemed to be shining like the sun. He put on some glasses. "Hello, I'm Izukumidoriya. I'm the god of chaos. The newbie god." The woman looked at him and smiled. "Greetings, youngling. I'm Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun in Japan. I'm happy to meet a new god." She then turned and glared at Discord, and unhappy to meet a leech who tried to destroy the boy's life. "I think this is divine retribution." Amaterasu grabbed him and introduced him to other gods from Japan, such as Fujin, Rajan, Tsukuyomi, Sujin, and some other gods and goddesses from Japan. They all welcomed him given that they are from the same origin, but they all seemed angry at Discord for causing a cosmic imbalance. He was then introduced to the Chinese gods and goddesses, including the immortals, which were interesting. He hoped things would continue to be good as it is right now, but the meeting was about to begin, so he knew that things would begin to go downhill from there. The meeting began with Zeus saying, "Gods, goddesses, we meet yet again." He looked around looking for the one person he wanted to see. He spotted Izuku and smiled. "This year we have fresh fish that managed to enter godhood at the expense of destroying everything till a goddess to balance him out suddenly appeared." He looked at Izuku. In a blink, Izuku found himself being held up like a prize toy. Zeus then said, "This person here is a new god. Can you believe it? A lowly human who came from the dumps of his society." He then made electrocuted Izuku a bit using his thunder, making the boy annoyed. Izuku phased through Zeus's grip and fell to the ground. He looked at the old god. "What's your problem? I didn't do anything, so why are you against me?" Zeus growled, "Other than your low BRTH. We came from cosmic powers. You came from people who grovel at our feet. You're no god. You're only a low human who shouldn't have come." He crossed his arms. "I honestly thought you were going to send your girl in your stead. I am fair, so I congratulate your courage." Izuku felt a vein on his forehead throb. "So, all this about is some kind of pity feud?" Izuku pretended to cry. "Oh no, I can't help but feel sorry for you. I'm so sorry that you're a beach who just can't accept me." He then laughed. "Bah, I'm sorry, but you're old news. Zeus was enraged and other gods followed his lead, seeing that someone of low BRTH was insulting them. Izuku crossed his arms as Zeus yelled, "You dare insult me? Zeus, the god of Greek gods." Izuku yawned, more like the god who can't keep it in his pants. Zeus was now red in rage. Ares on the side was laughing with Loki, "I mean, you have a lady as appealing as Hera and you fool around with other women. For shame to the god of gods, for shame." Hera crossed her arms and glared at Zeus. The god of the sky growled, "Do you think that some lowly human can talk to me like that?" Izuku yawned, "In case, you forget I'm a god just like you, and I'm so much stronger since my powers are embedded in the universe itself." He flicked the man in his head, "So do what you want, old man, because I don't care. I can beat you with relative ease." A lot of the gods began to mumble among themselves about the boy's arrogant attitude, but Zeus smiled, "Is that so?" Izuku nodded, "Then why don't we have a little spar? If you win, I and the rest of the gods will accept you. If I win, you go and never return to this place and your powers will be chained so that you can never use them ever again." Izuku didn't even think about it. "Deal, but don't come crying to me when you lose." Zeus then slammed his hand on the ground, then let the fight begin. The landscape began to morph into a fighting arena, making Izuku let out a whistle. "Now, that's much more like it. This seems He wasn't able to finish his sentence because Zeus punched him in the face, embedding the boy into the ground. Izuku came out of the ground grumbling, saying, "Cheap shot." Izuku saw a thunderbolt coming toward him, but he grabbed it, causing it to get electrocuted lightly. Izuku frowned, "Enough of that." He slammed his foot on the ground and made pillars from the ground as he said, "To me Mjolnir." Thor's hammer then went to Izuku, shocking the gods. Izuku then blindsided Zeus and slammed the hammer into his gut before summoning lightning and hitting him square in the chest. Izuku then opened his mouth and blasted him with fire. Zeus gathered himself. He grabbed Izuku's mouth, silencing him before summoning thunder through his hands to fry Izuku, but the boy summoned a battery that sucked all the energy from Zeus's attack. Izuku turned his hands into crab claws and grabbed Zeus's hand, throwing him away. Izuku then turned into an alien and attacked Zeus. The boy bit into the man's neck and began to thrash him around, but Zeus punched him in the gut. Zeus threw the lion off him only to be blasted in the face by Mjolnir's lightning attack. Izuku then said, "Man, Thor's hammer is awesome. No wonder Loki wants it so much." The hammer returned to Izuku, but before he could do anything, Zeus slammed an insane amount of thunder on him. The man huffed and puffed crazily, "So how's the strong one now?" Zeus suddenly felt an insane amount of gravity being slammed on him. He didn't know why, but he began to kneel down. "You're kneeling for me." Izuku came out of the mist. He put a hand on his face, "That's just too much." Zeus managed to break free from the gravity attack and traveled at supersonic speed to Izuku. Izuku yawned as he lazily put up his arm, blocking the attack, which caused a ripple throughout the multiverse only a select few felt. In a distant universe, a green-haired man was standing on the ruins of a destroyed medieval military garrison. He felt a disturbance in the sky. "What the heck just happened?" He shook his head. "You know what? I don't care." He then grabbed a man who tried to attack him and turned him into a dry shell devoid of life. "Next time try to be quiet." He then walked away to his next target. In another universe, a hooded figure was jumping from roof to roof avoiding heroes, but he felt a sudden disturbance that caused the heroes to foam at the mouth. "What the hell?" He looked around. "I don't know about this, but something feels fishy. I hope Father isn't behind this." In another world, a mask-wearing Izuku was looking at the Class 1B being turned into Seminomus. He then felt a shiver run down his spine. Intriguing. What just happened? In another place inside the multiverse, a green-haired boy was watching an All Might video, feeling happy that he's All Might's successor. He felt a sudden disturbance that shook his room. In another world, a swordsman was walking with a girl when they saw the sky rip apart before reconnecting, making them both look at each other and say at the same time, "We saw nothing." In another universe, a teen riding a motorcycle came to a sudden halt when his entire being shivered from fear. What in the seven hells was that? In location inside the wide multiverse, a man reading a book stood up. What the heck was that? Finally, inside a universe, a green-haired male was sitting against a laptop working tirelessly on it, felt the entire world shake around him, making him wonder what happened. I hope this is the end of whatever this was, but something tells me it's going to hurt my head later on. Back to the original universe, Izuku said with a cheeky smile, I bet a couple of versions of myself saw what happened in their universe, but only a select few felt it. Maybe, I will meet them someday in some sort of multiversal adventure against some ancient evil like Cthulhu. Zeus glared, joke as much as you want, boy, but my victory will make it much sweeter. Izuku laughed, do you know how many times you said that by now? Zeus frowned, you're too confident. I will end you. Izuku flipped Zeus away. The man stood up but felt another wave of gravity hit him with much greater force than the last time. This caused him to begin to kneel. Izuku came to him smiling smugly, you both know you want to rest your old bones, so why don't you kneel and rest already? There's no shame in declaring that you're defeated. Zeus tried to move, but he began to slow down. He suddenly stopped, don't tell me that he made me stop. No, he clenched his fist, I hate to admit this, but he might be one of us. In a last-ditch attempt to win, Zeus summoned his strongest attack. His lightning spear and tried to throw it at Izuku, but his attack was stopped before it even happened. The lightning spear began to implode on itself, engulfing Zeus. When the smoke cleared, the man was barely able to stand. He walked toward Izuku, I accept you, but I refuse to lose to you. Izuku smiled, in that case, have this. Izuku released some type of smoke that Zeus inhaled. Zeus's eyes suddenly widened in fear and he began to crawl away, no. No. The Greek god began to pale, you shouldn't be here. I left you trapped under a mountain. You're still trapped there. What Zeus was seeing was Typhoon. The monster that Gaia birthed with Tartarus to defeat him. He barely defeated him the first time, but now when he was already weakened, it will need a miracle even with the other gods helping him. Typhoon then raised his hand and bonked Zeus on the head, making the man pass out. Typhoon disappeared only for Izuku to be in his place. Izuku forced Zeus to inhale fear gas that forced him to see what he feared the most. Izuku jolted him awake, saying, I guess I win. He patted him on his back, for someone as old as you can tank some serious hits. Good for you. Still strong in your old age. Zeus sighed, I'm a man of my word. He looked away, at least most of the time, so by the power I hold over this council, I declare the. He grabbed Izuku, lifting him in the air like a ragdoll, izukumidoriya, a god of chaos. He looked at the others, make sure he doesn't team with the others and rip the universe apart. Izuku walked away only for Thor to yell, I refuse to accept him. He's no god. The man began to rant, making Izuku feel a little angry, so he decided to give him the Hulk treatment. Izuku's body buffed up to a huge mass. He suddenly grabbed Thor by his legs and began to slam him back and forth on the ground like Hulk did to Loki in the Avengers movie. By the end of it, Thor was moaning in pain as Loki said, so that's what Loki of Earth 19 to 99,999 felt like. Ouch. Izuku walked over to the Japanese gods who were still shocked over Izuku's action. Amaterasu said, what was that, Izuku-kun? You seemed like a different person. Izuku suddenly fell over, I don't know what's happening. He began to I feel like I have a hangover after drinking for 6 days in a row. Discord appeared on his shoulder, no need to thank me for helping, Izuku. Izuku looked at him with an angry look, you did this. Discord nodded, of course, he explained, the gods wouldn't have taken you seriously if you didn't prove yourself to them, so I gave you an injection that made you hyper. Izuku grabbed him by the neck and began shaking him, making the other gods sweat drop at the interaction. The rest of the day was spent with the gods talking among themselves about everything and nothing at all in the meeting. Nothing interesting actually happened. Izuku returned to his house around 5 p.m. only to be met by his mom and Pony talking. He immediately felt something wrong since Pony seemed to sweating buckets. Izuku sat down with them and chatted a little bit. He then dragged Pony aside and asked her, "What's going on, Pony? You seem like you saw God. And this is coming from me." Pony looked at him worried. "Well, I don't know what to tell without getting you angry and ready to go medieval on whoever caused this." She chuckled remembering what he did to Bakugou for her sake, "But this is serious, Izuku, so promise that you won't do anything stupid." Izuku nodded his head, but made sure to sprout a tail to cross it, making Discord shed a tear of pride. Izuku knew that he needed to act should he see the situation demand it. Pony then began explaining what happened. "Do you remember when I told you I'm going to visit your mom today to give her a ticket to a 5-star hotel for the next 2 weeks that I won?" Izuku quirked an eyebrow. "No, you never told me that." He shook his head. "Where did you even get such a thing? Is that even possible?" Pony shrugged. "Mama won in some kind of lottery and gave it to me since she wanted to return to the States." Pony then looked away. "But I already had something planned for us, so I gave it to your mom, so congrats on the free trip she just gained." Izuku hummed in approval. "Yeah, thanks for giving my mother such a wonderful plan." He then tilted his head. "Can you tell me what your plans are?" Pony winked at him. "Oh, Izuku," she tapped gently on the cheek, "how can they be a surprise if I told you about them? I guess you'll have to wait and find out what I'm planning." Izuku felt fear, but at the same time, he also felt excited, wondering what Pony was planning for him. He truly was excited. Pony then returned to the subject at hand. "Well, when I came, I found that your mother had someone drinking tea with her." Izuku quirked an eyebrow, not seeing what was wrong with that. "Well, the person who visited your mom was the HSPC president." Izuku felt a chill pass through his spine. "Okay, tell me everything." He grabbed her shoulders and shoved her down on his body, "And I mean everything." Pony rubbed her shoulder. "Well, it all began." Pony looked at the president of the HSPC. The woman looked back at her and smiled. "Hello, young lady. I saw you during the sports festival. You had an impressive performance." Pony began to sweat, but she kept a calm facade. "Thank you, ma'am." Inko then said, "Oh, Pony. Can you believe this?" Pony looked at her. "She came here just for Izuku." The president smiled, making Pony even more nervous than she already was at the moment. Pony shook her head. "No, I had no idea, but why?" Pony noticed the president's smile widen. "I mean, everyone performed very well." "Sure," Izuku stood out a little bit, "but not that much." The president then said, "I'm sure given that you're his girlfriend that you should know he stood out among the students like a sour thumb in the middle of the crowd." Pony merely nodded her head, accepting the woman's reasoning. "DMN it, what does she want?" Pony was worried deeply. "Mama told me the HSPC doesn't come unless they want something. That's why she quit the hero business in Japan and moved permanently to the States." Pony asked, "So how can I help you, ma'am? What do you want to know?" The woman smiled. "Nothing. All that I want is for Izukumidoriya to get an internship where his skills will be appreciated." She then smiled ominously, although only Pony caught the hidden meaning behind her smile. "Also, I want him to take an internship where he'd be protected from any unfortunate accidents that could put his life in danger or his loved ones." Inko gasped. "So, that's why you came to protect my baby? Thank you very much for protecting my son." Inko, due to her innocent nature, didn't quite catch the threat the president delivered to her should Izuku choose any internship except one from the HSPC-sponsored heroes. Pony did. She was going to tell Izuku. She only hoped he wouldn't go medieval on their butts. Pony finished telling her story. "So yeah. That is what happened, so tell me, how was the meeting of the gods for you?" She gained a very serious look. "And why did the sky shatter for a moment before repairing itself?" Itsuka called me telling me that she's inside a panic bunker eating canned beans like a crazy person. She's about to reach a new level of crazy like my uncle JHN. Izuku replied, well, Zeus called me out on a duel, so we had a couple of cosmic punches that shook the multiverse a couple of times. He looked outside. I'm sure a couple of versions of myself saw their world shake to their core. Pony sweat dropped. Do you always cause trouble wherever you go? She shook her head. So Izuku-kun, are you ready for a date? I have the cutest outfit. Izuku nodded. Yeah, I'm going to take you to this cowboy-themed cafe down the street. Pony pouted. Are you going to take me there just because I'm an American? She crossed her arms. That's really uncool, Izuku. I thought you would take someplace more romantic. Izuku tapped his chin. How about I take you to Paris? Pony's eyes lit up. Really, you want to take me to the city of love? She jumped up and down. That's so awesome, Izuku. Give me a minute so I can go and change my clothes. Izuku nodded, but... As soon as Pony left, he made a clone of himself. Izuku looked at him. Make sure that she doesn't find out. The clone nodded his head, so Izuku phased through the ground to the street and went to the HSPC headquarters. People are going to pay and learn that he's no pushover. Izuku made his way toward the HSPC. He finally reached the building. He looked at it with enough hate to melt into nothing but sludge. Izuku chuckled eerily. No one comes to the home and threatens my mom and gets away with it. Izuku walked into the building and someone tried to stop him, but Izuku flicked him into the sea. He continued to make his way throughout the building. He felt something was odd. There was no security, but the answer to this mystery was revealed when all of the guards were gathered around the woman's office. Izuku cracked his neck and said, "Men, we can do this the easy or we can do this the strong." The men pointed his guns at Izuku, making him roll his eyes. Izuku snapped his fingers, making the guns turn into snakes and wrap themselves around the men's hands. Izuku passed them and phased through the wall to meet the president. The woman smiled. "Midoriya Izuku. I've been expecting you to come here. I thought you would be here earlier, but I have no problem. Frankly, I had nothing better to do." She then pointed to a cup of tea. "Do you want some tea to calm down your nerves? You seem tense." Izuku slammed his hand on the table, transporting them both into a place outside of space and time itself, but the woman kept her calm facade. "How do you think you are to threaten my mom in her own house?" So the horse girl caught on. She hummed a bit. "I thought, given how naive she seemed, she wouldn't catch on even after years to come." Izuku felt his blood boil, making him turn into a walking flame, but the president said, "But in order to avoid anything misfortunate, I have a deal for you to sign." She gave him a paper. Izuku read it. "As of now and forward, you work for us. We'll train you to become the best hero you can be under Hawk's supervision. We'll see that you reach your full potential, and in return, you do us some favors." Izuku quickly signed it and said, "Deal. Now you sign it." The woman was shocked. She thought Izuku would argue, but she thought that since his mother's life was on the line, he just conceded. She signed the paper and said, "I'll see you during your internship with Hawks." Izuku chuckled. "Yeah, sure. Good luck in your pursuit of power." He walked outside the room. "By the way, I'm going to work with someone else. Don't wait for me." The woman quirked an eyebrow as he said, "Did you really think you can outplay me? You're dumb. Your soul is now in my hands." He now showed her what she truly signed. It was a deal saying the HSPC would leave Izuku and his family alone. Should any one of them try to harm his family, the president will slowly lose her life force. Izuku smiled. "I said someone was going to pay, and I guess you're the one paying the price. Goodbye, and learn your place next time." The woman was left sitting in silent fear for her life. School came back relatively quickly. Izuku went to school not before having a quick chat with Amaterasu, who nowadays works as a librarian near UA, which surprised him. When he asked her why, she simply said that even gods need a source of living and food, plus it was a pastime hobby of hers, so he simply shrugged. The boy was now in his class waiting for homeroom to start. His friends were chatting among themselves till Tsuyu came up to him. I bet people kept swarming you, Midoriya-chan. Izuku smiled, shaking his head. Well, not really. He crossed his arms. I had an ace up my sleeve to blend into the crowd without being noticed. Tsuyu tilted her head. You just camouflaged yourself, didn't you? Izuku nodded his head. Ochako then said, but I bet people were talking about you whenever you go. She began to pump her fist into the air. You were super awesome. I really liked the song you used against Bakugou. Izuku blushed a little. Oh come on. He put his hands on his face. I wasn't that awesome. I admit that the song was my own touch, but the rest I got was from old cartoons. He then saw Ida enter the room and Izuku greeted him. Good morning, Ida. He smiled at the boy, which made Ida shiver a little bit. How is your brother? I hope he's feeling better now. Ida smiled. Ah, yes. My brother is recovering quite nicely. He sat down in his seat. I heard the doctors saying that he'll be back in the field around next week. The boy was now sitting with a haunted look on his face, remembering the price he paid for his brother to become better. Ida stood in front of Izuku. Midoriya, at the entrance exam, you gave a vague warning about alleys and swords. You warned me about this, didn't you? Izuku sighed. I didn't know for sure what was going to happen if you're aiming at that, but yeah, I was warning you about something like that. Ida stopped him. I know that now. He dragged a hand across his face. At first, I thought it was crazy rambling, but now, I blame myself for not taking it more seriously. Izuku patted him on the back, but Ida asked him, but I came here to ask you one question. Ida looked at him with a hopeful look. Can you heal my older brother? Izuku smiled deviously. Of course, I can, but I want something in return, not money, just for you to sign something. Ida nodded his head rapidly, so much so that Izuku for a moment wanted to call him Rapidmon. Izuku conjured a contract and a knife. Okay, I'll cut your thumb so you can sign it with BLD to make the deal bend you forever. Ida paled but did as Izuku told him. Izuku then said, read the deal to know what you're on for. Ida took the deal and began to feel dread. It was a 100-page deal. The front and the back were fully written. He sighed as he read it, feeling dread engulfing him with each word. Ida sank into his seat. Now, I understand why Kendo calls him a demon. In the meantime, Tensei was laughing with Izuku at Ida's face after reading the deal. What Ida didn't know was that Izuku healed Tensei before Tenya asked Izuku. The deal was just to screw with Ida and secure for himself a sidekick in the future. Aizawa entered the room that very moment and said, all right, you disgusting midgets. He then looked at Izuku, and one overpowered midget. Today we're going to look into your offers. Remember that the offers aren't permanent. Pros picked for your performance at the sports festival, but they may lose interest as time goes on. He then displayed the offers. Usually, the offers are more spread out, but this year, they focused more on the top 4 students, especially one problem child in my classroom. There were a lot of high numbers. Shoto had 4,862 offers, Katsuki had 3,937 offers, and the most shocking of all was Izuku, who had 23042. He has offers from all over the world. Hell, he even has one from North Korea. I guess a madman would like a madman to work with him. Izuku's friends began to congratulate him on this very impressive feat. It was rare to have an outside country offer, but to have offers from all over the world was truly something else. Izuku, on the other hand, had swirls in his eyes, unsure what to pick. There were so many offers to pick from. He felt a little bit dizzy. Aizawa then said, all right, be quiet now. We still have something very important to do that will determine your future in heroics. He looked at them with a very serious look. You're going to pick your hero. Name. The students began to cheer. Shut up. Was Aizawa's response to the students' cheers. This is very important because if you don't pick them carefully, then you're Midnight came into the room, going to be in hell for the rest of your career. Midnight then disturbed pens and boards for students to use and write their hero names. All the students were nervous. Izuku could just tell by their faces, but then Aoyama walked up first to Midnight. His hero name was odd, but Midnight for some reason accepted it. Following him was Mina, who wanted to use the name Alien Queen to be her codename, but Midnight refused. Mina was about to back down, but suddenly she felt the urge to argue. The two girls kept talking for half an hour before reaching a compromise to let Mina name herself Acid Queen. Others were lackluster like Jiro's Earphone Jack. Some were cool like Tokoyami's Tsukuyami. Shoto took his "I'm cooler than all of you" attitude a little too much because he just used his name. Finally, it was Izuku's turn. He put his name, going on forward, "I'll be known as the Chaos Hero, Discord." Midnight was about to congratulate him, but Mini Discord appeared with a megaphone and yelled into Izuku's ear, "Hey, don't go around stealing my name." Izuku looked at him, "Why are you even bothered? You don't use it anymore." The two began to bicker back and forth, but Discord finally agreed to let Izuku use his name. Finally, Aizawa let them go after reminding them that they have until the end of the week to submit their internship choice. When Izuku was walking home, Pony walked beside him and said, "Ready for a great date?" Izuku nodded and they went on an amazing date. The date finally ended inside Izuku's home. The two were sitting on the couch making out with each other. Suddenly, Pony stood up and said, "I'll be back." Izuku sat and waited only for his girlfriend to return with a very hot cowboy outfit as she asked him, "What do you think? Are ready to go around with me?" The girl then hugged him and continued their intense makeout session. Hours later, both Izuku and Pony were cuddling each other under a blanket on the couch. Their clothes were thrown around on the ground. In the corner of the room, Discord was near a trash can. "I cannot unsee what I saw today. My eyes. It burns. It burns." In Izuku's house, both Izuku and Pony were putting on their clothes. Pony buttoned her shirt with a goofy grin. "Last night was amazing. It couldn't have been better." Izuku had a blush on his face remembering last night. Pony was like a siren. He didn't know how she drew him in. On the plus side, he can't say he didn't enjoy last night. The after treatment is even better because Pony is feeding him chocolate-covered strawberries now. Pony looked at him as she shoved another strawberry into his mouth. "So, tell me," she put on her innocent facade she usually uses, but Izuku would never be tricked by it again. "Did you like last night?" She then hugged him and whispered into his ear, "Do you want a repeat of?" A pressurized water blast from a power hose held by Discord made them soak in water from head to toe. Izuku looked at Discord. "What the heck was that for? Do you know how much time it will take me to make us dry again?" Izuku snapped his fingers making Pony and him dry. "It took me about 6 seconds to make us dry." Discord yelled, "Consider this punishment for the horrible images you implemented in my head." He then hugged his legs. "It was so disturbing. I can never unsee what I saw yesterday." Izuku gave him a bored look. "You could have just averted your eyes," he tapped his chin, "or went to one of your D&D sessions with Dark Shadow." He then crossed his arms. "You know Tokoyami still complains to me about how you're both loud when you play it." "I can't, you moron," Discord facepalmed, "even though I can leave your head and walk around." He shivered a little bit. "I can't go far away from your body because I will begin to fade away and return to your head, so next time, you want to have fun, give me earmuffs." Izuku sighed and nodded. "Fine." The boy rolled his eyes. "For any future activities we'll give you a warning beforehand." Pony was sitting there silently with a blush on her face. Izuku asked Pony, "What agency did you decide to go with?" "Pony," he wiggled his eyebrows, "I bet it's going to be a badass heroine so you can learn to kick butt." "Well, I first wanted to go with the snake hero." Izuku blushed imagining her in some kind of fancy advertisement looking like an angel, "but I heard that she only does advertisements so I decided to go with the rabbit hero." Izuku's face paled imagining his already terrifying girlfriend returning with Miruko's attitude. Her attitude was already terrifying enough. Pony smirked at his face. "Don't worry. I won't rough you up when I return." She slapped him lightly, "At least, not too much." Izuku gulped and prayed to whatever lord to hear him out and make Pony change her mind. His phone pinged and he saw a message from Zeus that said, "Man up, beach." Pony then said, "Alright, how did you decide to go with?" She wiggled her eyes. "I bet you decided to go with Ms. Joke or her sister Funny Bones." "I can only imag." The girl began to shake in fear, imagining the damage her boyfriend might do after interning with those two heroes. She grabbed him by the neck. "You aren't allowed to intern with them. You hear me?" Izuku disconnected his neck. "Well, I'm not planning to intern with them in the first place." He then freed himself from Pony's grip and reattached his head to his body. "Really? You aren't interning with them?" Pony tilted her head. "How come you aren't interning with them?" "From what I heard, they are the most suitable for you." Izuku just shrugged. "I just don't want to do it." Now, Izuku might have said that, but reality couldn't have been further from the truth. Back in Class 1A, Izuku walked up to Aizawa and handed him his internship request. "Aizawa-sensei, I already decided who I want to intern with. Can you make it official?" Aizawa looked at him with boredom. "Fine, but word of advice," he took the paper to see who his problem child was interning with. "Next time look for more options. B. Ms. Joke," the man whispered under his breath. He felt a shiver travel down his spine. He loved Emmy. He truly did, but he imagined having Izuku intern with her making his life even more complicated. He trembled at the thought. Aizawa put the request down. He looked at Izuku and walked outside the room. "Wait here for a bit." Izuku just stood there with his classmates looking at the scene in interest. A few moments later, Aizawa came with a flamethrower on his back. He looked at the internship request and activated the flamethrower, burning the paper into ashes along with the table. He then looked at Izuku and said, "It is denied. Find someone else." He turned around to sleep but stopped. He then said, "Hand Funny Bones request too." Izuku shook his head. "Yeah. I just don't want to go with them." He rubbed the back of his head. "I decided to go with Sir Night Eye instead." Pony arched her eyebrow in confusion. "You mean All Might's old sidekick? It seems an odd choice." "Well, I hope to see why he decided to pick me," Izuku said, but Pony gave him a "why did you pick him" look which made him admit, "Fine, I just want to see how I can screw with your quirk." Pony giggled. "Of course, you want to do that." She grabbed his cheeks and began to stretch them. "You won't be my destructive lord of chaos if you didn't screw with people's lives." Izuku then cracked his neck. "Alright, I'll teleport us to the dorms to get ready for our internships today." Pony nodded as Izuku snapped his fingers, teleporting them both. Inside Izuku's dorm room, the boy has already finished packing his stuff. He was making his final touches on torturing Itsuka during his week-long internship. He knew the girl couldn't live without his pranks, and he couldn't live without her suffering. He walked outside his room and blew a whistle. He heard a groan followed by Ida walking up and saluting him. "Good morning, High Commander. How can I serve you?" Bakugou, who was walking by, laughed at Ida. "Good work being Deku's beach." Izuku rolled his eyes and snapped his fingers, making two vicious snapping pineapple appear and bite Bakugou in the butt, making the boy run around while yelling in pain. Ida tried his best to hide his smug grin at what happened, but failed and began to chuckle. Izuku then asked him, "Is everyone ready for the internships? We only have half an hour to move." Ida tapped his chin. "Everyone except Jiro is ready." He then remembered what happened to Kaminari when he tried to wake her up. Jiro isn't a morning person. She can be very prickly. Izuku hummed. "You are relieved, Ida. I'll go and make her up." Izuku rubbed his hands evilly, making Ida sigh in exasperation. Izuku walked to the girls' side of the dorms. He saw Momo. "Good morning, Yayorozu." He then noticed a black eye on the girl's flawless skin. "What's with the black eye?" "I walked into a war zone with good intentions," Momo said, rubbing the black eye. "Jiro is seriously cranky when someone tries to interrupt her beauty sleep. Izuku snapped his fingers and made the black eye go away. Don't worry. I'll handle this. Momo nodded but silently wished that Jiro make him suffer. Izuku walked into Jiro's room. He had to admit it looked like a musician's personal heaven. He saw Kyoka wrapping herself inside her covers looking like a human burrito. Izuku smiled at her before summoning a huge blowhorn and putting it beside her ear and earphone jacks. The boy tried the diplomatic way first. Kyoka-chan, wake up. It's time for the internships. 5 seconds later and with a flash of purple lighting, Izuku was thrown out of her room. F off. I want to sleep a little bit more. Izuku took this as a challenge and began to use the more aggressive methods to wake the girl up. Izuku looked at the huge blowhorn and activated it. The sound was amplified, causing Jiro to launch herself from the bed and hang to the ceiling in shock. She glared at Izuku. What the F, dude? You know I have sensitive hearing. Izuku chuckled and summoning a cup of water. Well, if you woke up the diplomatic way, I wouldn't have resorted to doing this to you. The girl then backed to her bed and glared at Izuku taking the cup of water from him. Kyoka began to drink, but Izuku made some last-minute changes to the cup. He thought it wasn't hot enough. The moment Kyoka drank it, she felt her stomach begin to turn upside down. She felt like she was being boiled alive from the inside out. She looked at Izuku and growled, "You F-er." The girl then opened her mouth as fire blasted out of it from the hot drink. She quickly ran downstairs to the tap water in the kitchen. She opened it and tried to drink, but this only increased her agony because the water was extremely hot. The girl kneeled to the ground as she felt her insides melt into slag. She felt someone tap her shoulder. She looked up and saw Izuku with a cup of milk. The girl didn't want to trust him, but she had no choice. She took the cup and drank it greedily. Once she finished, she exhaled a sigh of relief as steam exited her mouth. She looked at Izuku rolling on the ground from laughter. A vein bulged on her forehead as she sent one of her earphone jacks into the boy's neck and began to torture him. Kyoka was using OFA to make the vibrations stronger. What the hell is wrong with you? Izuku removed her jack from his neck. Well, consider this as your usual tribute for me. He then noticed something. Hey, Jiro. Does your family have some genetic disease that makes your hair white? He then plucked a white hair from the girl's head. Jiro rubbed her head and said, No, I don't think so. She then looked at the white hair strand. I'll talk with my mom about it. She coughed into her fist and went to her room to get ready. Discord appeared beside Izuku. Why are you concerned? Some people have white hair strands. Izuku rubbed his head. You said that two powers can't coexist peacefully inside one body once, right? Discord nodded, but Izuku shook his head. Nothing, I just thought about something. The dorm's entrance was kicked open. Izuku looked and saw Itsuka twitching with small electric currents going off her. The funny thing about this is that Izuku had no idea what happened. Itsuka grabbed him. Why the hell did I find 2 electric eels inside my shower? Izuku shrugged. How the hell should I know? I didn't send them there. He summoned a calendar. I have lots of projects, but none of them have electric eels. She then threw him like a rag doll across the room and vowed vengeance against the boy, making him laugh. Discord appeared beside him. You truly don't have anything to do with this. Izuku waved his hand a little, meaning that he might have something to do with it, but not much. Back in Itsuka's dorm, the girl was packing her clothes from her week-long vacation from Izuku. A week away from him is like a week in heaven. The girl was giddy that she had All Might's teacher choose to have an internship with him. What the girl didn't notice was that Izuku had prepared for such an occasion. He summoned a raccoon and gave him specific orders to make Itsuka's life as hellish as possible. Its mission started today. Aizawa stood in front of the train station after accompanying his students there with Vlad's class. The man looked around and saw his students' excited faces for the internships. He felt a little bit happy for them, but something was odd and it was making his skin crawl. His problem child hasn't caused a disaster yet. He thought Izuku would have made at least 3 of his classmates by now hear colors. Instead of that, he was just standing there as he looked at Pony with a goofy look on his face. It confused Aizawa to no end as much as it scared him. "Midoriya," Aizawa called to his least/most favorite student, "why are you smiling so much?" He then grabbed the boy's shoulders. "Is Nizu beginning his world domination plans earlier than we thought? I was sure we have at least 10 years of preparations before he begins." Izuku prayed Aizawa off his shoulder. "First, I can smile as much as I want since it isn't a crime." He took a few steps back. "Second, something magical happened last night that you most definitely don't need to know." He then looked at Pony, "And finally, you need at least 20 years of preparations before Nizu-sensei begins his invasion of the world." He stopped for a moment, a mischievous grin forming on his face. "And it's closer than you think." Aizawa paled at the newly revealed information. He took out a special phone and yelled into it, "This isn't a drill. The rat will make his move soon. I repeat, the rat will make his move soon. Activate DEFCON 1. I repeat, DEFCON 1. We have a moral duty to save the world from the rat." He looked at Izuku, and his demonic apprentice. The boy laughed at his teacher's panic. He looked around and saw Mineta twitching. He raised his eyebrow and asked, "Mineta, why do you look like you've been subjected to an electric eel treatment? You look like Itsuka over there." He pointed to the orange-haired girl who was still twitching from the eels from earlier. "I don't know," Mineta said initially as he looked at Izuku carefully. "Every time I look at you, I feel a disturbance in the perv force." He looked at Pony and then looked at Izuku. You. Izuku looked at the small midget clenching his fists. "How could you betray me like that?" Aizawa looked at Mineta. "What in the world are you talking about, Mineta?" He ran a hand through his face. "If you're talking about Midoriya joining Nizu's efforts in world domination, it's been a dead giveaway from the beginning of the year. The best we can hope for is for Midoriya to be a benevolent overlord." "I'm not talking about that," Mineta yelled. "I'm talking about that BSTRD getting laid last night." The small midget exclaimed at the top of his lungs, making everyone look at him. They then looked at Izuku and Pony. The former pretended not to see them while the latter hid behind the former. Aizawa dragged a hand across his face. "I could have lived my entire life without hearing that." He looked at Mineta. "Thanks for that, Mineta." The small midget then spontaneously ignited on fire and began to run around yelling in pain. Izuku said, "Next time, keep such information for yourself." He then blew air toward the flaming boy and implanted him into a wall. Izuku then created a napkin and wiped his sweat away. "Wow, I almost lost my cool back there." He threw the napkin toward the bin, but someone took it. "This will be great for the cult," Yui said with a small smile. She looked at her Pokemon who was shaking its head in disappointment, making the girl sigh and dropped the napkin into the bin. "Just because you asked nicely. Not because I wanted to do it." The Pokemon then nuzzled his face into her leg, making her bend down and pet him. Ibra walked up to Izuku and attempted to slap him, but the boy pointed his finger to her wings, stopping the girl in her tracks. Izuku asked, "Is there a reason for you to try and slap me? How could you defile and stuck Pony like that?" The girl crossed her arms. "I thought you were better than that, Midoriya. What you did was extremely sinful and you must repent." The girl stopped and shivered, feeling a sense of dread coming from behind her. She turned around and saw Itsuka with a demonic aurora surrounding her. "Repent, you say?" Itsuka walked to Ibra and grabbed her shoulder. "Have you repented for trading my sanity for a pair of wings?" But. Ibra tried to defend her case. "My wings are so fluffy. I like them." This statement made Itsuka very mad and she began to chase Ibra around to pluck her wings. "Come back here, sinner," Itsuka yelled. "Face your divine punishment like a good girl or it'll be worse than it already is." Ibra refused to stop running. The chase continued for a little while as Vlad yelled at Aizawa, "Control your problem child, Aizawa." He made Ibra into a hooligan. The sweet summer child of my class was turned into a co-conspirator to make Kendo's mind unravel into nothing. Aizawa looked at him with tired eyes. do you honestly think I have any control over the problem child? He walked away from the man to gather his class because the trains were beginning to arrive. You're cute. I have no control over him whatsoever. Talk to Nizu so he can put a leash on him, not me. Vlad slumped to the ground and began to cry. He had to make two strong choices. Either allow Izuku to play with his class even further, or make a deal with the demon rat of UA. He then heard a thump. He looked and began to sigh as Itsuka grabbed Ibra and began to pluck Ibra's feathers. He stood up and went to solve the altercation. Aizawa gathered his class. Alright, midgets. He looked at Izuku, and overlords. Today, you are going to the internships, so that means you represent UA's reputation, so try your best to be on your best behavior. The entire class nodded as Aizawa said, in that case, load yourself on the trains. I'm going home to sleep. Izuku walked to Pony and gave her a good luck embrace which the girl reciprocated back. Izuku was about to walk away when he was crowded by a bunch of girls who were asking him for his number. The girls all stopped when they felt an ominous aurora coming from behind them. They looked and saw Pony standing still with a very dark and ominous aura surrounding her. What the heck do you girls think you're doing? Leave my boyfriend alone. Izuku used this time to run away because seconds later he heard a war cry and slapping happening. He would have found it very hot that girls are fighting for him, but his life would be at stake. Izuku left his girlfriend to deal with the girls and headed to his friends. He looked at Ochako and Ida. Ochako was excited as always. I can't wait to go and train with Gunhead. Izuku smiled, that's wonderful, Uraraka. I hope that you can make the best of it. He then looked at Ida and said, try to make sure that you won't do anything I would do under normal circumstances. He patted Ida on the shoulder and left a baffled boy behind him. He finally headed toward Kendo and said, I guess this is it for an entire week. You aren't going to see and I'm not going to see you. I'm going to miss our good time together. Kendo looked at him and flipped him off, like hell, I will miss you. I'm one step away from tearing my hair off and dating my Netta. The boy suddenly manifested beside her but was quickly kicked away by Monoma. This week is going to be the happiest week of my life. See you never. Monoma looked at Izuku who was smiling. You have something planned for her, don't you? Izuku didn't reply, but he just kept smiling as he looked at the top of the train that Kendo entered where a raccoon gave him a thumbs up meaning he was ready for his mission. Monoma looked at Izuku, you are pure evil. Izuku gasped, I'm not pure evil. I'm pure chaos. Get your facts straight. He then flicked Monoma's nose and walked to his train as he saw Pony dusting her hands with a bunch of girls piled on each other moaning in pain. His girlfriend was truly scary. Izuku sat in his train wondering what might I teach him. His powers were relatively simple enough. He collected chaos energy from the world around him which allowed him to do many feats including but not limited to reality manipulation. Izuku brought up his notebooks but sent a mental message to the raccoon to begin his mission. On Itsuka's train, the girl came back from buying refreshments for her and Jiro. Here you go Jiro, a cup of lemonade. Kendo looked at her cup of coffee, and for me, a cup of black appealing coffee without baby number 21 being there to make it into dirt. The girl sat down only for a farting noise to feel the train making everyone look at Kendo whose face was as red as a tomato. The girl looked under her hoping to find a Wu-Pai cushion, but there was nothing. Jiro looked at Itsuka with a sympathetic look, cheer up. This might be just a parting gift. Kendo nodded her head, but both of them didn't notice the raccoon under their seat. Izuku walked into the agency of Sir Night-Eye. He looked around it for a bit. He had to admit that the agency lacked luster a little bit. He expected a little bit more from All Might's previous sidekick, but then again, he figured that the man was looking for a plain look given he was more of a background hero type who works from the shadows. He began to look for someone to lead him to Sir when he bumped into something or rather someone. He looked up and whistled, man, you're as built as a mountain. The person chuckled, thank you, I worked very strong to gain these muscles." He flexed his biceps. "Maybe one day if you work strong enough yourself, you can be just like me." Izuku chuckled to himself. "Why wait?" He then blew air into his muscles and made them all pump up. "Look at me, I'm now full of hot air." He flexed his new muscles, but they deflated. "Meh, I always liked the skinny option. Make things less awkward when I want to change." The person laughed a little. "You have a good spirit, kid." He then walked away, but stopped to introduce himself. "Where are my manners? My name is Mirio Togata. I'm a third-year student at UA High School. My hero name is Lemillion. The hero who's going to save 1,000,000 people." Izuku nodded. "That's a nice goal. I hope to see you one day in the #1 spot." "You." Izuku grabbed his hand and shook it, only for Izuku to be hit by another vision. In the vision, Izuku saw a dark alleyway. He then saw a small horse wearing white garments being chased by a very huge crow. A blonde lion looked at the scene but turned his face away. He backed away from Mirio, who had a worried look on his face. Mirio asked him, "Midoriya, are you okay? You were sweating pretty heavily back there." Izuku wiped some sweat from his face and said, "No, nothing. I felt a huge wave of chaos." He looked at a map and saw Hosu. There must be something big going on in Hosu. "Well, in that case, I'll ask Sir to go there so we can investigate it," Mirio said with a smile. "But enough chit-chat, we need to talk to see Sir. He was very intrigued by you the moment he saw you." Mirio still remembered how Sir Night-Eye reacted when he saw Izuku. It was the first time he saw the man showing genuine terror on his face. It was a little bit interesting if he had to say so himself. Mirio was at Sir's agency training for a bit. He heard Sir call him. He looked at the man who held a serious expression on his face. "Mirio, I asked to come here so you can watch the first years." Mirio nodded his head. "I have to ask. Why do you want me to watch them, Sir? Last year, you weren't so interested in this." Sir replied, "Well, I heard that there might be some interesting characters in this year's festival." Mirio shrugged and sat with Sir as they watched the festival. It was nothing special, but he found the boy with the sentient quirk who ruined his speech a little bit funny. Mirio watched carefully as the race began. He had to admit that Todoroki had quite the firepower on him, but ironically it was his ice that was extremely strong, though he did notice Sir's unimpressed look as he examined the boy. "Is there something wrong, Sir?" Sir sighed. "That Todoroki boy isn't using his full potential. He adjusted his glasses. I can tell just by looking at him that he's holding back considerably and on purpose. Such a disappointment." Mirio raised his eyebrow in confusion, but before he could ask, he saw the most incredible thing as one of the hero students lifted the 0-pointer and threw it at another one. The blonde-haired boy smiled. "Now that is what I call power. Now, I have to see, that is quite impressive." Sir nodded in approval. "Such strength. Could he be the one that All Might gave OFA to? Still, he is nothing compared to Mirio." When they reached the huge chasm, both Shoto and Katsuki were having trouble using their quirks, with Izuku laughing at them like an insane person with his sentient laughing alongside him. They then reached the minefield, which began to act weirdly, making pink explosions that affected people in different ways. Mirio couldn't stop laughing when the orange-haired girl was turned into a reverse mermaid. The finale was the funniest when Shoto and Katsuki were turned into puddles, forcing Eraserhead to wipe them away from the commentator window. The cavalry race was a little bit interesting, but there was a lot of action like the previous line. The tournament was the most entertaining part of the festival. He saw the true powers of Izukumidoriya from the first round, where he sent his opponent crying like a beach, to the second round where he simply made Dark Shadow leave Tokoyami. Then his fight with Shoto was interesting. Ha 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 ha. Mirio couldn't stop laughing at Katsuki's flat-screen TV face. "This fight is going to be amazing. I hope we have popcorn." The fight with Katsuki was hilarious. He especially liked it when Izuku began to sing and called Bakugou second. but the true killer was when the monkey emerged from Bakugou's rear, making him fall over from laughing. We need to bring him here for an internship. Mirio looked at Sir and frowned a little. His mentor's face was contracted into sheer horror. It was like he was watching a monster in this sports festival. Sir, the man shook his head and looked at Mirio. Is there something wrong? The man adjusted his glasses. Nothing. I was just interested in that boy's powers. He then looked at his office. Would you go and tell Bubble Girl to bring me internship papers? Mirio nodded. Yeah, I'll be back in a jiffy. Mirio went away, leaving Sir to his thoughts. How is this kid? What kind of power does he have? His eyes then widened. Could he be related to AFO's son? The thought made his body shiver. This was truly terrifying. AFO has a son with so much power that he can change reality itself. This made fighting AFO much more complicated, but he found a little glimpse of hope given the boy seemed more interested in messing with people than controlling them. This still didn't help ease that tiny voice in his head that said run to the hills. Run and never come back. He hoped that the voice wasn't right. He hoped that the boy's quirk was just that strong, but even then, the boy needed to be put under constant surveillance to make sure he didn't fall into the wrong hands. He felt his body flinch at the thought. Did we already lose him? Night Eye looked at the ceiling. What criminal mastermind did we lose him to? What kind of horrible beast of hell got to him first? In UA, Izuku and Nizu were discussing their plans for world domination. To start our invasion of USA, I suggest we stage an attack on Europe or the Middle East to distract the country into a bogus war and drain its resources. We then attack. Izuku and Nizu then sneezed together, making them wonder who was talking about them. Sir's bad feeling was correct, but it wasn't a villain that took Izuku under his wings, but a hero. Mirio didn't know why, but Sir's look made him shiver that day. It looked like he was looking into a catastrophic universe that met its end under the fist of a tyrannic ruler. He shook his head. Well, Kohai. They stood in front of an office. I hope this meeting with Sir Night Eye goes as smoothly as possible because Sir can be sometimes a little bit intense. Izuku chuckled. I heard that. Some sources even say that he has a torture tickling machine for people who don't smile that much. Izuku slapped Mirio's back. Can you believe that, Togata-senpai? A well-respected hero has a torture machine inside his office. If this isn't a joke, I don't know what is. Mirio's sweat dropped. Well, he is in it for a huge shock when he sees the tickling machine. Izuku walked up to the door and said, wish me luck. Izuku clenched his fist. I'm going to nail this meeting. Oh yeah. He walked into the office only to be greeted by the sight of a semi-naked blue girl strapped to a machine tickling her with a man standing in front of her operating the machine. Upon closer inspection, he saw the girl wasn't naked, but her costume was really skimpy. Still better than Yaoyorozu's first costume. The man looked at Izuku with a stern glare, but the boy was still knocked out of the loop regarding what was occurring in front of him. Izuku causally summoned a bowl of water. He proceeded to pluck his eyes out and dip them in the water before putting them back into their place. He inspected the scene once again only to see what he saw wasn't some sort of trick or glitch inside the matrix. It was real. Izuku didn't know how to feel about this, but he knew the rumors were true about the tickling machine. Night Eye looked at Izuku and sighed. He then let out the girl he was tickling. Next time, try to smile more, Bubble Girl. The girl nodded and ran outside the room. Night Eye then ushered Izuku toward a chair in front of his desk. Izuku mentally prepared himself for one of the weirdest conversations on the face of the planet, but he quickly said, look, I'm all into kinks and stuff, but tickling machines are off the table. Sir Night Eye coughed into his fist. That was a small punishment for being late on some reports. Izuku tilted his head. Wow, if that was for the reports. What will happen to her when she messes up a mission? He tapped his chin. She gets covered in honey and made into a human chicken. Sir chuckled a little before readjusting himself. No, I'll just put the machine into its max mode. Izuku whistled. There's a max for that thing. He rubbed the back of his head, and here I thought I saw everyone there is to be seen. Guess I need a couple more years. Night Eye then changed the subject. Alright, let's talk business. Why did you choose my agency instead of the many others that you were given? Izuku shrugged. Well, to be honest, I don't know myself. Night Eye raised his eyebrow. I was kinda interested to see why you sent me an internship even though you never sent one before except to Togata-senpai. Then again, I heard you can help me with fine-tuning my powers, so that's something I'm looking forward to. Sir Night Eye hummed. I see. He sat down on his chair. He put his elbows on the table and crossed his hands before putting his hand on them. And what can you bring to the team? Izuku rubbed his hand. Laughter gas. My quirk analysis skills are something to be looked at. He then puffed his chest. I mean, I don't want to tote my own horn, but Nizu-sensei made me his student and future successor. Sir felt the color drain from his face. This boy is Nizu's successor and student. It's like having two versions of the demon rat. He looked at Izuku. I must bring him back to humanity's side before all hope is lost. Night Eye then shook Izuku's hand. Welcome to the team, Midoriya. He discreetly tried to use his quirk on the boy, but he got weird feedback. The only thing he saw was Izuku yawning in a void of darkness. The boy looked at him and waved as if he knew he was there. Sir shook his head and said, let's start your training sessions right now. Sir walked to the door. I'll get Mirio to show you the building later on, but for now, you'll both spare together. Izuku nodded and walked outside the room to put his hero costume on, but he suddenly shivered. I guess Pony has begun her training with Miruko. Hopefully, she won't change that much. He then dipped his head down. Who am I kidding? Once she comes back, she's going to use me as a punching bag. So unfair. With Pony, the girl stood in front of Miruko's agency with a smile on her face. She can't wait to walk in there and learn how to kick butt. She walked instead, but her instincts from living with two brothers who liked to prank her as much as they could breathe told her to duck. The girl threw herself to the ground as a white missile went soaring past her outside the rabbit hero's agency. A voice then said, good reflexes, kid. Miruko came back in with a smirk on her face. Most people wouldn't have been able to dodge that kick, but you managed to do it, so good for you. Pony went to Miruko and began shaking her hand. Mrs. Miruko. I'm a big fan of yours. She took out a notebook. Can I have your autograph? Please. It would make my boyfriend really jealous. The woman smiled. Of course. She signed the notebook and handed it to Pony as she said, but know that flattery will get you nowhere here, so get dressed and meet me in the gym. Pony nodded and went to put on her costume. Izuku walked with Sir to the training grounds. For Izuku, it was an opportunity to see how he could stack up against his senpai in school. For Sir, it was an attempt to see how well Mirio can stand up against Izuku in case the boy decided F it, I'm going to go AFO and take over the world to be the ultimate demon king or something like that. For Mirio, who was waiting inside the training room, it was a new chance to fight someone new and steamroll all over him. For poor Mirio, it was his bad luck that drove Izuku to be his new sparring partner. Midoriya, Sir spoke, grabbing Izuku's attention, when you fight Mirio, I don't want you to hold back. I want you to fight him as if he was a real villain and your life depends on winning this fight. Izuku tilted his head until it was 180 degrees, you want me to fight him at 100%, he then fixed his head, are you sure that you didn't eat something funny or are you just plain crazy? Sir felt his eyebrow twitch. Yes, I want you to fight him at 100% to see where you are in terms of strength. The man adjusted his glasses. I don't want to brag, but Mirio is the next number hero. Discord appeared and snorted. That's until Izuku came to the scene. The man looked at the sentient quirk. Izuku is going to steamroll over your student. He can already defeat all mights. Izuku grabbed Discord's mouth and tied it into a knot. Sorry about him, but he likes to talk very much. Izuku then threw the ex-Chaos Lord over his shoulder like a ragdoll, making Discord feel a bit peeved. Sir bit his lip. He knew the quirk was talking about All Might's successor. He wanted Mirio to be All Might's successor, but the man couldn't see reason. Mirio was perfect. He was like the second coming of All Might, but the man couldn't see it. He only saw some hero student with a mediocre quirk that couldn't match up to Mirio. The original reason why he requested Izuku was to see if he had OFA, and he was going to nicely ask him if he could hand OFA to Mirio since he's the more worthy candidate, but now he has no idea whatsoever about the person who has OFA, but all he knows is that Izuku knows who has it. Sir coughed into his fist, "Look, I can't hold you accountable for whatever your quirk says, but try to keep him under a tight leash." Discord appeared back on Izuku's shoulder and stuck his tongue out. Izuku shook his head. "Anyway, are you sure that you want to go all out against Mirio?" Sir looked at him with an annoyed look. "I mean that even 10% of my power is too dangerous for him." Sir felt very offended at this moment. "Are you saying that Mirio is too weak to face you?" Izuku rubbed his head. "No, all I'm saying is that I just don't want to harm him too much." Sir replied, "Don't worry about Mirio. He can take care of himself and is more than strong enough to handle you." Sir adjusted his glasses once more. "Overconfidence can kill you in the field." Izuku smirked. "It isn't overconfidence." Izuku made an opening to the sky and began blasting air into it. "It is just skill, my good sir. Pure skills." He then closed the portal. Sir rubbed his head. "Alright, why did open a portal to midair only to pump air into it?" Izuku smirked. "I just closed the ozone hole." He walked away from him. "Good luck having Mirio-senpai beating that." Izuku flexed his muscles once more. Sir's eyebrow twitched at the challenge presented to him. "Okay, let's make a small deal between us." Izuku eyed him up and down with discord crawling around the man on the ground. "So, I assume that you're interested in my offer." "I'm not interested," Izuku replied. "I'm just taking a sucker's deal." "You're going to lose anyway." "I'll take your reply that you're at least intrigued." Sir gritted through his teeth. "So, do we have a deal, now?" Sir extended his hand only for him to see it being engulfed in green energy. The man began shaking his hand as Izuku said, "Why do you look like Alastair from Hasbin Hotel right now? You should look at yourself in the mirror. You look like a shady drag dealer." Sir coughed into his fist. "I agree with you. I didn't look like a hero a moment ago, but I ask you again, do you accept my deal?" Izuku merely shrugged and shook his hand. "Alright, the deal is simple. If you win, I'll admit that you're better than Mirio," Izuku yawned, "but if you lose, you're going to use your powers to transfer OFA to Mirio since he deserves it." Midoriya's eye widened. "Wow, this guy is kinda sneaky." He rubbed the back of his head. "He also has a very weird obsession with Mirio having OFA. Doesn't he believe that Mirio can make it on his own? Geez, what a lousy mentor." Izuku nodded. "Cool, but I thought you would have more faith in Mirio in becoming number based on his powers alone, but I guess you don't have any." Sir halted and said, "I have faith in Mirio's abilities, but he will be able to do great things with OFA." Izuku rolled his eyes. "Please, don't tell me that you handpicked just to have him receive OFA because he looked a little bit like All Might and had a bad sense of humor like the big man himself. From what All Might told me, each user has to be different than the last. If you're trying to create a chain of users who are like All Might, I hate to break to you, but it won't work longer than Mirio or his successor. And if what I'm thinking is right on the money, no one will ever use it." Sir clenched his fist. "I'm not trying to make Mirio another All Might. I'm simply guiding him to be the best." He then looked at the entrance of the training ground, "and when the time comes for him to hand OFA, I'll help pick a worthy successor." Izuku gave Night Eye a weary look. "Yeah, you're definitely ain't trying to do that." Izuku kicked the door open. "Mirio, I can see in X-ray vision." The boy was looking at the ground. "Don't try to surprise me. Get your butt up here and hopefully with clothes." Mirio popped from the ground. "Well, you took my element of surprise away." Sir walked between them. He then put his hand on Mirio's shoulder. "Look, Mirio." The boy looked at him. "I want you to fight Midoriya over here. I want you to show him the ropes of being a top hero." He patted the boy on the back. can you do that for me? Mirio crossed his arms, of course, by the time I'm done with him, he'll be seeing stars. Izuku felt a vain throb on his forehead, are you trying to challenge me? Sir clapped his hands making both Izuku and Mirio take their spots on opposing sides of the arena. Izuku cracked his neck and Sir was about to announce the beginning of the fight when Discord appeared, stop everything that you're doing. Izuku looked at him and asked him, what the hell are you doing now? We're in the middle of something. Discord rolled his eyes, if you can kindly go somewhere else, that would be. Discord cut him off, I didn't leave when you were trying to procreate, I'm not leaving you now before we have insurance that we won't be held accountable for anything that happens to the boy. Discord took out a deed and showed it to Izuku, it contains everything that may happen to him including being lost in time, maimed, burnt to a crisp, getting thrown into space, becoming the father of humanity without knowing it. Wow, Izuku whistled in appreciation, you got everything included in this contract. Izuku handed the deed to Sir who signed it without looking at it. Mirio asked, aren't you going to read it, Sir? He looked at the deed and saw many ways that might make him die making him feel worried, really worried. Plus, the deed has Nizu's signature on it. Sir looked at the deed again. He felt a little worried now but pushed the worry down. The man then said, since that is out of the way, let's the fight between you two begin. The man then ushered them to take their positions, get set. The man knelt, fight. Mirio sank into the ground making Izuku raise an eyebrow before shrugging. He looked into the ground and flicked his fingers. The ground suddenly began to morph and it spat out Mirio. The boy fell face first to the ground as Izuku looked at him, how's everything on ground zero? Mirio jumped back up, this is going to be interesting. Izuku smiled, alright, it's my turn to attack you. He then summoned a machine gun, say hello to my little friend, Emily. The boy began firing gum at Mirio who was phasing through the ground to avoid the shots. Izuku then fired another type of ammo. It hit Mirio in the face and launched him out of the ground. The material was slimy and looked like oil. Mirio tried to wipe it off, what the hell is this? Izuku sighed, this is ectoplasm. Mirio rubbed his head, it nullifies things that go intangible or can density shift. Izuku then enlarged his fist and tried to punch him only for Mirio to roll away. Mirio frowned a little, Midoriya's quirk is too strong. His quirk allows him to harvest chaos energy from the world and use it to do whatever he pleases. In other words, his power is reality manipulation. This isn't something you can win against. He avoided a stampeding elephant, plus, you can't cut off the source of his energy. Mirio sank into the ground and tried to reach Izuku to punch him, but Izuku sprouted wings and began to fly up in the air. Izuku smiled, come up here and fight me if you can. Izuku began to laugh, but he was suddenly flung to the ground as Mirio smiled at him victoriously. Izuku rubbed his chin, okay, I think I underestimated you too much. I never thought I was going to do this, but you forced my hand. Izuku pressed his hands on the ground causing the world around them to change. The new fighting arena looked like a twisted maze of horrors. A voice bellowed, enter the maze of horrors at your own risk. He began to tease Mirio, come here, little blonde chicken. Do you dare to fight me into here? In my domain. Mirio smiled at the challenge, just be sure not to cry at the end of it, Midoriya. Mirio sank into the ground, but once he was there, he lost all of his senses. If it was strong to navigate before, now it felt like he didn't have any sense of gravity or navigation. Mirio popped from the ground only to slam headfirst into a frying pan waiting for him. Mirio shook his head as mini stars rotated around his head with a couple of birds. The birds suddenly stopped and began drilling into the boy's head. Mirio swatted the birds away and said, I guess Midoriya took off his friendly gloves. Come and find, Mirio, Izuku yelled deep from in the maze making Mirio smile a little. The boy tried to phase his head through the walls but quickly learned not to do that. The first time he did that a stink bomb went in his face. The second time he was trapped in some sort of medieval contraption and had a machine give him the spanking of a lifetime. The third time his face was met by a cup of noodles, though he had to say it tasted nice. Finally, Mirio was running through the maze with a single thought in his head: this isn't a fight anymore. This is a one-sided slaughter. I only got one hit on him. Suddenly a portal opened under him and he fell through it only to land face first on the ground. Izuku walked to Mirio and squatted in front of his face. Do you want to give up now or should I kick around a little bit more? Mirio smiled. No way. The boy jumped back up. Do you know why? He took a pose. It's because I didn't use enough power, so I'll use more power. Mirio sank into the ground, but Izuku just stood there. The blonde-haired boy then emerged from the ground. My special move. His fist then went through Izuku's face, who didn't flinch. Eyeball crusher. Mirio tried to punch Izuku in the gut, but his fist phased through him, making Mirio's eyes widen. Don't tell me. He can also become intangible like I can do. Izuku's body became solid, trapping Mirio's fist inside his body. Izuku smiled. Good game, but it's over. Electricity arched through Izuku's body and went into Mirio's. By the end of it, Mirio fell to the ground coughing and raised his hand. All right, I give up. Izuku put his hand in front of Mirio. Nice game. I really felt cornered there for a moment. Mirio chuckled. I don't think I ever got close to that. He then accepted Izuku's hand. Izuku helped him stand and both made their way toward Night Eye, who looked one step away from an aneurysm. Discord snapped a picture of Night Eye to put it inside his album. Izuku then whispered into the man's ear, I expect you to respect your end of the bargain and leave my friend alone and out of your delusions. He patted the man on the back. Izuku and Mirio walked away to share a drink as Sir said, that's impossible. It isn't scientifically possible for him to win. Discord laughed at him, taking another picture for the album. Back with Pony, the girl was wearing her hero suit and bouncing inside the gym. She was excited to have a sparring round with Miruko. The girl walked into the gym only to receive a kick to the face. Miruko stood over her with a savage grin. Rule number 1, girly. Never let your guard. She then kicked Pony another time in the chest. Rule number 2, when you take a hit, make sure to never stay down because you'll be toast in the field if you stand down too much. Pony stood up and began blasting horns randomly at Miruko. Take this. The heroine dodged them with ease before reaching Pony, kicking her in the head. And finally, rule number 3, don't react. You have to act. Take things into control. Pony nodded. Yes, Miss Miruko. The girl took a fighting stance. I'm ready to fight you now. Miruko grinned. That's what I like. She launched herself at Pony, a girl with a fire similar to mine. The rabbit heroine began to weave through Pony's horns and kicked the ground where Pony was standing. The heroine dodged another barrage of horns. She looked up and saw Pony hovering on some horns. Pony smiled. You have to catch me now. Pony began to launch attacks at the woman. She then used her horns as daggers. The girl was controlling 6 horns at the same time, chasing the rabbit heroine, who was dodging each attack easily. The woman then jumped from side to side. The horns followed her, but the rabbit hero then changed her course toward Pony and kicked the girl out of the air. The girl managed to regain control of herself, but Miruko was already on her, making the girl fly away as she sent a barrage of horns at the woman. Miruko destroyed the horns and said, this attack won't work anymore on me. She then saw something move toward her and destroyed it. It was a single horn. Neither will that. Miruko launched herself toward the girl and slammed her head into Pony's stomach, making Pony gasp and fall to the ground. The rabbit hero landed beside her and said, look girly, you did well for a newbie, but you have fatal flaws in your style. Pony adjusted herself. What are those flaws? What should I do to correct them? Miruko smiled. Well, first you need to work on your speeds and maneuverability while using those horns of yours. Second, you depend too much on your quirk. You are half horse, for crying out loud. You could Probably kick a wall down if you felt like it, so we'll work on fighting skills if you were cornered, and using your quirk would be dangerous. Pony nodded and began writing notes in a small notebook that appeared out of nowhere. Miruko said, "Alright girlie, let's go back to training. We have lots of work to do before I give you a real taste of actual hero work." Pony nodded, and they began to spar again. At Kyoka's internship, Kyoka and Itsuka stood in front of an old house, but Itsuka had her eyebrows twitching. This has Izuku's name written all over it. "I'm sure he messed with our trains to bring us here." Kendo carried on with her rant in anger. Kyoka looked at her with a sad look. Poor Itsuka, Midoriya is putting her mind through mental loops. She looked at Itsuka who had a rain cloud over her head. "I think this is going to be the best week of her life away from him." Kyoka then said, "This is All Might's old teacher. The guy is ancient. Of course, his agency is going to be a trashy old place. I think Midoriya has put you through so much, didn't he?" Kyoka hugged the girl and patted her on the back. There, let it all out." "Thank you, Kyoka." Kendo cried a little. "I don't know why, but he's been making my life hell on earth. I haven't been this stressed out since my twin brothers decided that dyeing my hair yellow was a great idea for some reason. That summer I looked like a walking banana." Kyoka replied, "Well, he targets you since you are the easiest out of all of us who he knows will not stand down and take lying there." Kyoka made circles in the girl's back, "So if you want him to back down, you need to ignore him." Itsuka throughout this whole conversation only heard the phrase easiest, which didn't sit well with her competitive side or her normal side. The girl cracked her neck. "He thinks I'm an easy target, huh? When we go back to school, I'll show him an easy target." Kyoka's sweat dropped as she remembered something Izuku told her. Kendo won't back down what you do. Kendo has an extremely competitive side. She can't accept defeat, especially not in this type of war where her pride is the one wounded the most. That's why I love targeting her. She's too easy to rally up. Kyoka shook her head. "Wait up for me, carrot head." If she was going to this internship, she might as well arrive on time. The girls knocked on the door, but no one answered. Itsuka walked through followed by Kyoka, but both of them gasped in shock when they saw an old man lying on the ground with BLD surrounding him, but something felt off to Kyoka. The earphone jack girl used her hearing to listen to his heartbeat and sure enough his heart was still beating. The girl gained an annoyed expression. "Not funny old man. I can hear your heartbeat. What were you trying to do? Give us a heart attack because you kinda did." The man then stood up. "What? I was bringing the sausages to make lunch for you girls when you arrived, but I tripped and fell. The ketchup I had slipped. I wasn't trying to do anything." Kendo then said, "Well, it's nice to meet you, sir. It's an honor to train with All Might's teacher. My name is Itsuka Kendo." She then pointed to Jiro. "The girl with the earphone jacks is Kyoka Jiro. We hope that you can teach us to the best of your abilities." The man nodded. "Oh my precious granddaughter wants me to teach her how to cook. This day couldn't get any better for those fragile old bones of mine." Itsuka's sweat dropped a little. "No, sir. I'm not your granddaughter. I'm a hero student from." The man continued with ramblings making both Kendo and Jiro frown. The orange-haired girl leaned toward Jiro. "Are you sure this isn't one of Izuku's pranks?" Jiro replied, "I'm sure it isn't. Even he wouldn't be able to pull off something this creative." Kendo then proposed, "How about we see if we can still change our internships?" Kyoka nodded. She went for her phone, but a voice stopped her. "Those are very nice suits you have there, girls. Not too bad. They fit your style and aren't too flashy like most heroes' suits are these days." Both girls looked in front of them to see the man inspecting their hero suits. Kyoka gasped and coughed a little in her fist. "When did he manage to get our suitcases?" Kendo replied, "The better question is, when did he move to begin with?" The man threw the suits at them. "Oh kids. You have no idea what hell you walked into when you interned with me." The small man crossed his arms. "Welcome to hell, your tour guide for the week is me, Gran Torino. Learn to fear my name. He then threw the suits to them. I have a room upstairs. Get dressed. I want to see what I'm working with here. See how good you are at fighting dodging. Your reaction time, you know. Both girls nodded and went to change as Gran said, why do I feel like there is someone else in this house? He shrugged and went to eat a bit of his food. The man was eating happily as the raccoon commissioned by Izuku to make Kendo's life hell rubbed his hands together. He then made a countdown with his fingers. When the last finger went down, a scream of pain could be heard through the house. Moments later, Kyoka and Kendo who were walking strong stood in front of Torino. The man asked, what the hell was that scream about? Kyoka who was rubbing her rear, when we put on our suits, we found a very unpleasant surprise in them. The girl flinched from pain, someone put a porcupine baby in my pants, literally. Kendo added, they took special care of me by putting a porcupine and 2 crabs in mine. Gran Torino didn't know if he should laugh or wonder what was happening, so Gran said, alright, moving on, I want you two to fight me. I want to see your skills. Maybe work awareness, since I'm sure anyone would have noticed the porcupines and the crabs in their pants. Kendo and Kyoka grumbled as they readied themselves to fight the small man. They thought that this was going to be an easy fight, but they were dead wrong. Once the fight began, the 2 students felt 2 feet collide with their faces. They looked around to see a yellow blare moving around the room like a crazy bird. Kyoka flared up OFA at 8% and tried to punch Gran, but the man jumped above and kicked in the back of her head making her taste the ground. She tried to stand up, but Gran directed a kick to Kendo making her fall over the punk girl. Both girls stood up. Kendo saw a yellow blare move toward her, so she enlarged her fist and punched her fist forward, but the girl couldn't touch him. Gran replied to her attack by driving her foot in her back and making the girl cry in pain and faceplant into the ground. Kyoka sent out a sound wave toward Gran, but the man moved quickly and kicked her in the stomach making the girl twist in pain on the ground. Gran quickly made his to Kendo and kicked her in the chest area making her fall to the ground. This fight carried on for 5 more minutes until the girls raised the white flag declaring their defeat. Gran laughed, you youngsters are sure very mellow nowadays, if you were back with me back in my prime, oh boy, this would have been 10 times as difficult. Kendo stood up rubbing her back, somehow, I can't find myself to doubt, so I'll take your word on it. She then cracked her back and neck, wow, that was horrible. Kyoka stood up, I felt like I was a punching bag. She looked at Torino, what are you? Some flying UFO that delivers kicks on the gut. Gran laughed, what did you expect from me? Some senile old man who can't help himself. He walked over to Kyoka and patted her cheek, you're cute, kid, but I didn't make All Might shake in fear whenever I'm mentioned by being nice. Kyoka remembered when All Might told her about Gran. Young Jiro is here, All Might appeared in front of Class 1A, can I borrow you for a small moment? The girl shrugged. All Might grabbed her and took her away leaving a baffled class behind him. All Might eventually stopped and Jiro asked, so what is this about? I have a new offer for you, young Jiro. Jiro couldn't help but notice that All Might was shaking like a twig in front of a strong breeze, it's from my old teacher. He saw you at the festival. Jiro stopped him, alright, what the hell is going on? He pointed to All Might, and why are you so afraid? It looks like you're about to face the boogeyman himself. Believe me, young Jiro. I already faced the boogeyman and he scares me less than my teacher. All Might thought while his legs quivered, my teacher saw your performance, and he thought my teaching was horrible. He said that you needed an expert to help you control OFA. Jiro chuckled as she stuck her tongue out cutely, don't tell me that the great strong All Might is afraid of some sickly old man who probably can't tell us from BS. All Might looked at her, you don't know yet of the horrors of Gran Torino. He shivered a little. He seemed like he was having WW2 flashbacks, once you train with him, you won't be able to look him in the eye and not shiver in fear. Alright, he's a scary old man. Ah, ugh. The girl began to cough violently in her hand, making All Might feel worried. Man, what the hell is wrong with me, and from what world did this cough come to haunt me? All Might patted her on the back. Dear Lord, young Jiro, do I need to take you to recovery, girl? Jiro shook her hand. Nah, I had this cough for a while now. Don't worry about it. All Might nodded. Oh, one more thing I need to tell you. He seems to be interested in your classmate Itsuka from 1B, so do tell her. Jiro nodded and walked away. She looked down at her hand and saw the cracks reaching further down her arm. What in the world is happening to me? Gran said, alright girls, we need to work on your reaction time. We also need to figure a way for the two of you to work together, since I saw snails with better coordination. Kendo stood up and rubbed her head. Yeah, I'm sure that I'll have a couple of concussions by the end of this internship. Torino looked at her and said, no pain no gain, my dear friend. He then cracked his neck. Now, up and again, we need to have another round. The man began to bounce from one wall to another before slamming into Jiro's gut. Kendo jumped in the air to grab the man, but he flew upward. Itsuka tried to outsmart him by enlarging her fists, but he used them as a trampoline to jump away from her. Itsuka was then kicked in the stomach and flew to the ground. Gran then dodged a sound blast from Jiro and slid under Kendo's as she tried to grab him. Kendo then slammed her hands together, causing the room to vibrate, but something fell on her face. The girl had a scorpion on her face, making her scream in fear. The girl threw the insect off her and was kicked in the face by Gran. Don't lose focus. In a villain fight, you'll see something even worse than a bug. Kendo was still shivering from the insect, replied, easy for you to say. She looked at the scorpion. You're not the one who just had it take a ride on your face. Does your house need to be fumigated or something? The girl rubbed her shoulders. Jiro yelled, focus on the bugs later. She jumped away from a kick. We have a flying elderly citizen kicking our butts. The girl fell to the ground with a kick to the back of her head. Kendo nodded and jumped up as Gran came near her, but she raised her leg attempting to kick him, but the man dodged. Nice try, sweetie, but I'll give you points for creativity. Maybe, you'll like this, Jiro said as she raised her hand. Solo blast. The girl used a finger flick alongside her music beat to make a strong attack that tore a hole through Torino's house. Oops. Once the man saw the damage, he frowned a little. Nice move combining your attacks. Jiro chuckled a little, waiting for the stick after the carrot, but expect to find the repair bill on your parents' front yard. The girl groaned. Kendo jumped above Torino and clapped both her hands twice, disorienting the man for a moment. She tried to tackle him, but he quickly recomposed himself and flew away. Nice move, rookie. The fight continued like this, with the girls trying to grab Torino only for the man to avoid them. By the end of the second round, both girls were on the ground panting in exhaustion from their fight with the old man. As Jiro said, man, for an old man, you sure aren't like what commercials show us grandpas are. Don't you have any cookies for us as a reward for trying so strong? Gran laughed. No, I don't, but if you want, I have some taiyaki for you girls to share with me. Both girls nodded, but Gran said, go wash up and relax. I'm sure that your body is sore from all this training. Once you finish, come back here. The girls stood up and went to shower, but unseen to them in the water pipes, the raccoon was waiting for Kendo to take a bath to drop through the water pipe chocolate syrup on her. He also made special adjustments to the taiyaki. Gran began eating before the girls. The first bite was normal, but once he continued to eat from it, the taiyaki began to feel weird. One time it tasted like dirt, the other time it tasted so hot he needed to drink water. He was cut from his musings when he heard a scream. What the hell is wrong with this house? He sighed. What happened now? He walked to check on the girls only for a floorboard to fling itself up straight and smack him against the face. Torino pushed the floorboard down and grumbled as he went to check on the girls. Through a crystal ball, Izuku was watching everything and laughing. From the side, Sir was hugging his legs and murmuring something about a demon rat's protégé. With Ida, the boy was walking with his older brother in the streets of Hosu. Ida was interning with Manuel since the Hero Commission gave him a month's leave so he could recover. The older sibling came by to check on his brother. Ida was happy to see his brother. Brother, I can't express how much I'm happy with your visit. Tensei smiled at him, of course, little brother. The older man smirked mischievously. Tell me, how are you doing with your new boss? The older man couldn't help but laugh at Ida's shivering. Tenya frowned at his brother. Why didn't you tell me about Lord Commander Midoriya healing you? Tenya shook his head in sadness. I could have been saved from working for him. Little brother, Tensei patted Tenya on the head, you're too uptight. Believe me, you need a little bit of chaos in your life. He then remembered when Izuku healed him. Man, I laughed so strong when he healed me. He said that he was afraid you might go on the deep end and go hunting for Stain. Tenya began laughing awkwardly with his older brother. Imagine the responsible Tenya Ida going after Stain in a mad campaign to kill him. Ida chuckled with a strained smile. Yes, imagine that happening. Now that would be insane. Ida looked away. Whatever happens, Tensei must not know that I was going to hunt Stain. Tensei then said, by the way, Tenya. The younger Ida looked at him. Why did you choose Manuel of all people to intern with? I'm not doubting him given that he has a good reputation, but I thought you might intern with some members of my agency. Tenya replied, well, I thought that Manuel would be a good starting point for an internship instead of going for something too advanced from the beginning. Tensei nodded, I see. This is some good logic behind your decision. He put his hand on his chin. Starting with something easy is much better than going with something strong from the start. Tenya nodded and continued to chat with his brother as they walked down the street unaware of someone watching them. On the roof of a building, the hero killer Stain stood there watching the Ida brothers talk with each other. I can't believe this. I am sure I managed to paralyze him. How is he able to stand on his two legs? The hero killer remembered clearly when he stabbed the fake hero Ingenium through his back. He saw the blood dripping from his bleed. He saw the sword tore through the man. He saw the older man drop his brother off at Muano's agency and said, no one escapes my judgment twice. The hero Ingenium will die once and for all today. The older Ida walked down the street, so the hero killer followed him down the street only for a black mist to form in front of the sword-wielding man. The man took a defensive position, but the mist took a humanoid shape. Stain eyed it carefully as the mist spoke, don't be alarmed, hero killer. I came here to take you to my boss. Stain replied, what does your boss want with me? My boss wants to talk to you, Kurogyri replied, we mean you no harm. Stain nodded his head. Kurogyri opened a portal and through it walked Stain. The moment Stain walked through the portal to meet the Mist Man's boss, he knew that nothing good would come out of it. At best, he would be some wannabe villain who wanted him to join him only for Stain to refuse and leave from where he came, or at worst, he would have to kill his way out. The first thing he saw was a young man in his early 20s, and he had to admit he wasn't impressed. Just by looking at the man, he could tell that he was some low-class villain who had no vision whatsoever. So, you're the boss over here. Tamura looked at him. Yeah, that's right. I'm boss. He then stood up, and I have a deal for you, hero killer, Stain. Stain looked at him curiously. I want you to join the League of Villains. Stain rubbed his chin for a bit. And why do you want me to join? The man crossed his arms. I know that you didn't seek me of all people to join you on a whim, so to rephrase my question better, why should I join you? Tamura groaned, but Kurogyri nudged him a little. The young man growled at Stain, but cleared his throat. We both have the same goal. We both want to destroy Hero Society, so why don't we join forces? Tamura crossed his arms. After all, what better way to bring Hero Society down than to team up and help each other? Stain scoffed. I see that my decision to come here was a mistake after all. He looked at Kurogyri. Take me out of here. I have no time for mindless idiots who have no vision. Tamura snarled, what the heck are you talking about? Vision? Tamura laughed, that's rich coming for you. You're just another run-of-the-mill sociopath who thinks he's helping the world. Tamura stood up. What makes us so different that you won't join me? Stain eyed him like a predator sizing up his prey. What is your goal? Why do you want to bring down hero society? Stain looked into Tamura's eyes. Answer my question, kid. Tamura gritted his teeth. I want to destroy everything that displeases me. Stain shook his head. Then I have no business with you. Stain turned his back to Tamura. You are but a child throwing a tantrum. I have no business with you whatsoever. Tamura groaned. Why are you calling a child? Tamura looked ready to kill Stain. You're nothing but a sick killer. Do you think that you're doing something noble for this world? You're no better than I am. Stain rolled his eyes. We're nothing alike. He then unsheathed his sword. Stay where you are or I'll kill you the moment you move. Kurogiri was about to intervene when a voice came through the speaker. Kurogiri, please don't do anything, this will be an educational moment for young Tamura. Kurogiri just stood there, but he felt a sudden sting in his shoulder. He tried to move, but couldn't. The man looked at Stain who was holding a bloodied knife in his hand. What did you do to me? Stain shook his head. You don't need to worry about that. He looked at Tamura, but you are going to die today. Stain stated before asking, any last words? Tamura was enraged. The young man charged at the hero killer who dodged him before stabbing him in the shoulder and making Tamura fall to the ground. The man tried to move as Stain stood above him raising his sword. The word hero has lost its meaning. Stain glared at Tamura. I will be the one to restore its meaning. All I do is for the sake of a better world. I will not stop till my message is heard and the meaning of the word hero is restored. He lowered his blade to Tamura's throat. If it means killing a couple of fakes, so be it. The only man allowed to kill is All Might. Tamura retorted, all this sounds to me like a rambling of a madman who couldn't achieve his dream. He was still trying to move. Do your worst. I will still kill you at the end of this. Stain groaned, and if to achieve my goal, I have to kill a couple of headless chickens who have no conviction, I am willing to do it. Stain saw Tamura was able to move when the man grabbed his blade and decayed it, making the hero killer jump away. Tamura stood up. Conviction? What the hell are you talking about? Tamura began to scratch his neck furiously. All this world knows is power and strength. That's why I will destroy this society. Stain eyed him for a moment. I see. Stain then stood down. So it appears that we both have something in common even though we have polar opposite goals. Tamura growled, what the hell are you talking about now? He then stood up. Just a moment ago, you were about to kill me, now, you're praising me. Stain scoffed, praising no. I merely saw a small seed of conviction inside you that made me keep you alive. Stain rubbed his chin. I wonder how this small seed will grow. Tamura walked away. So you stabbed me the arm, so what? You can test me. Stain replied, people close to their death, show their true colors. Through that, I saw in the sea of wickedness inside your heart that small seed of conviction. Stain looked at Kurogiri, open a portal to Hosu, I still have work to do there. Kurogiri nodded and opened a portal for Stain to use. The man walked through it and returned to the place where Kurogiri picked him up. Tamura groaned from pain. That guy coming here was a complete waste of time. Talking about heroes and All Might. The man grabbed a chair and destroyed it, making Kurogiri think to himself, what did my bar ever do to you, young Tamura? Kurogiri then said, I say we still use Stain as a way to gain more followers. Tamura groaned, yeah, whatever. He walked up the stairs. I want to play video games. He stopped for a moment and said, you know something. Tell sensei that I need a couple of nomas ready for tomorrow night. Tamura smirked, I'll show that hero killer who's the best. Kurogiri asked, what do I tell him if he asked me why do you need the nomas? Tamura replied, tell him that he needs them for a very important mission tomorrow in Hosu. The young adult left the room, leaving Kurogiri to sweep the floor clean from the dust that Tamura made after he destroyed a couple of items inside the bar. He truly wished Tamura would stop doing that. It was annoying. Back with Izuku, the boy was once again fighting Mirio. Well, fighting would be too much of a generous term. It would be more like a one-sided beatdown that Sir insisted the blonde boy keep fighting Izuku to see if he's able to hit him or fight him to a standstill. Currently, Izuku is sitting on a chair looking at the ground. He summoned a giant fly swatter and waited for a few moments before Mirio popped from the ground yelling, "Pow!" He didn't get to finish his catchphrase because Izuku swatted him away like an annoying fly. Discord, who was sipping a lemonade Izuku made with Sir, asked the green-haired man, "You know that your student won't be able to do much, right?" Discord refilled his cup and did the same with Sir. He's practically a god walking among men at this point. I wasn't called the God of Chaos for nothing. Sir nodded, dully noted, but this is for Mirio to find ways to fight people with such an advantage. The man looked only to see Mirio trapped inside a cage while dancing so he wouldn't get electrocuted. It was funny as much as it was sad. Sir then yelled, "All right, that's enough for tonight. I want you both to go and sleep." Izuku snapped his fingers, causing the top of the cage to open and the floor to throw Mirio out of it. The boy flew a little bit in the air before gravity decided he needed a much-needed reunion with the ground. The boy flew and planted face first into the training grounds floor. Izuku stretched his body. "Man, that was strong. I'm going to have a good night's sleep now." Mirio stood up. "HRD on who?" The boy cracked his back. "I feel like I was run over by a horde of angry buffaloes." He rubbed his shoulder and added, "Only to get into a punching match with a kangaroo afterward." This was not funny. Sir patted him on the back. "The important thing is that you keep trying, and you'll get there." A voice from behind them both laughed. "I highly doubt that, but keep hoping." Both men jumped in fear and looked to see an astral projection of Izuku present with them. The projection disappeared only for Mirio to say, "Sir, when I first met Midoriya, he said something was going to happen in Hosu. Do you think we should check it out tomorrow?" Sir hummed for a bit before nodding. "All Might told me that he has some limited form of precognition, so it is best to go to Hosu." It was 5 a.m. at Gran Torino's house. It wouldn't until another hour before the man decided to wake up and go to kick his interns awake for sleeping overtime. He was currently sleeping in his bed wrapped in a couple of blankets. Kendo and Jiro were sleeping together in a bed inside a room that Gran gave them so they could get some rest and sleep after his harsh beatdown. What they didn't know was that their peaceful slumber was about to get a very rude awakening. The raccoon looked at his watch and tapped his foot. His tail was waging back and forth. He nodded to himself. He pulled out a bag which he began to fiddle with. Moments later, he pulled out a rooster with a megaphone attached to its mouth. He stealthily made his way into the girl's room and put the rooster between them. He gave the rooster instructions to wake up the girls when the old man screams. The raccoon then made his way toward the old man's room. He was sure to stay quiet in his movements because he didn't want to wake up the old man since he seemed to be a light sleeper. The raccoon took a zipper and attached it to the frame of the old man's bed. He then opened the zipper in one quick move, allowing ocean water to flood the room. It didn't take Torino a couple of microseconds to wake up only to see himself swimming inside the ocean with a menacing shark staring at him. The man quirked his eyebrows before kicking it in the face, making the shark run back into the ocean. Torino opened the door of his bedroom and yelled, "What the F is going on here?" He then looked around. "Who the F made my bedroom into an aquarium? I'll kill you all." The raccoon looked at the man after he secured the zipper. He wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead before waking a military crawl outside the bedroom. He then hopped to get ready to make their breakfast into a huge mess. Inside the girl's room, the rooster heard the old man's screams of anger. He tapped on his chest. He then began to make small noises to test his voice before he woke the girls up. He made sure to open the window to make it look like he snuck inside the room. Once he settled on a voice, he took a deep breath and let out a mighty roar that made both girls jump from their beds in fear. Kendo enlarged her fists and Kyoka activated OFA to be ready for a fight, though they looked less threatening because they were hugging each other. Kendo looked and saw the rooster still going at it. The girl walked up to it and grabbed it by the neck. Kendo glared at it. Tell me, he's the one who sent you, didn't he? The girl began to shake it back and forth. Speak up, you stupid poultry. She tightened her fist. I said speak up. I know that you can speak, so tell me if he's the one who sent you. Jiro saw this and bit her lip. She was sure that Kendo was a step away from madness. She grabbed the girl and patted her on the back. Clam down, Kendo. The girl glared at her. The window is open. It must have entered our room by accident. Kendo pointed to the megaphone attached to its mouth. What about this, huh? Did it also have it on him by chance? I think not. She gave the rooster to Kyoka. This must be Midoriya's doing. The girl was about to go on with her rant when the door was opened. Gran walked into the room, and he was soaking wet. He looked at them and growled, "Can any of you open a portal to the ocean?" Both girls shook their heads. Then how come my room was a water park with sharks in it a couple of minutes ago? The girl went to answer before the man raised his hand. You know what, I don't care. He began to walk away. Freshen up. We're going to have breakfast, and then I'm going to vent out some stress on you because I'm really angry right now. Kendo timidly asked, Sir, don't you mean that you're going to train us? Gran stopped for a moment before continuing in his descent. Yeah, that too, so be ready. Kyoka sighed and flopped to the ground with a dejected expression. He's going to wail on us for whatever happened to his plumbing. The girl didn't want to believe Izuku was behind this because it meant she had to get back at him, which meant he would tease her even more. Kendo looked at her. You're in denial. Talk to me when you come back to reality. She walked to the bathroom, but looked at the chicken. You're on today's menu. The rooster began to shake in fear. He saw from the corner of his eyes the raccoon giving a military salute, telling the rooster that he was on his own. The rooster gulped as it tried to make its way out of Kyoka's hand, but the girl strengthened her grip on it. Where do you think you're going? You heard her. You're on today's menu. Kendo opened the bathroom door only for a bucket of slime to fall on her head, making her eyebrow twitch. Jiro swore for a moment she saw flames come from inside the bathroom. Minutes later, the girls were sitting with Gran Torino in his living room having a wonderful breakfast, well as wonderful after the rude awakening they had. Their breakfast tasted great at first, but they carried on. The food began to taste bland and like a wet blanket. Gran asked, Is it me or is the food beginning to taste bland? Kendo replied, No, but this is a demon's work at play. She clenched her fist, and I hoped my coffee would make me feel so much better, but it doesn't taste like coffee. The girl went to the sink and emptied her cup of coffee, talking about her loss of an appealing cup of heaven-powered liquid and swearing vengeance against the demon who caused this. Gran quirked an eyebrow. A demon? He chuckled a little. Don't tell me that you're religious like your vine-haired friend in the sports festival. He laughed a bit. The girl seemed ready to bow and worship that Midoriya brat at any second. Kyoka laughed. No, Ibra wasn't going to do that. Gran looked at her. She just made a deal with Midoriya to give her angel wings if she sold out Kendo's sanity. Gran Torino laughed. Man, that's priceless. Must have been pretty shocking when you found out. Kendo bit into an apple. I plucked her feathers and made a pillow out of them. She crossed her arms. That will teach her to miss with me. Little twerp couldn't even muster a reply when we first met her. Now she plays with my sanity. This isn't over, no, not by a long shot. I'll turn her hair into my garden. She whispered the last part. Gran grinned a bit. I guess you aren't the type to take a hit and just lie down after that. Kendo shook her head as Kyoka said, That's why Izuku always targets her. Jiro smirked at her. Her pride won't allow her to take his hits and ignore him. If she did so, he won't bother anymore. Gran raised his eyebrow. The Midoriya boy targets her. Yeah, All Might told me about his other student who likes to play with the mind of a girl in a different class, but I thought he meant the boy's girlfriend. Kendo looked at him. I'm sure he's the one causing all of this. She looked to the ceiling. He's the only person who can make an ocean appear inside the bedroom. Gran rubbed his chin. I believe that you're right. Tell me girls, where is he interning? Kyoka replied, he's interning with Sir Night Eye. She put down her sandwich. Why are you asking? The old man smiled and looked at Kendo, who smiled back at him, making Kyoka feel worried. In another room, the raccoon was doing a small victory dance with a projection of izuku. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 7. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Demon Heart 12 on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.